talking to myself for a few minutes. The broadcast is live. Here we go.
I was wondering if you were noticing this time.
I just know because it's funny. It doesn't say that when I'm the host. It just says you are live. That's much less fun than the broadcast is live.
Well, for you people that remembered Scott Connor when he was on the show, he's still in our little, I guess what we call our little messenger chat for the show. And when we said tonight's topic, what did he say? We're doing post-apocalyptic comics tonight. And he was like, that is just cheery as hell for Christmas. So welcome to the post-apocalyptic Christmas comic book show. Me and Jared, and hopefully people will be
we'll get whoever else shows up, they'll show up.
Yeah. So
here's a thought I had just before I came on the show. I put a little check mark down because I was like, you know what? Since I'm pretty much the only one on the show who is currently reading comics. Or I should say, reading current comics.
There you go. Yeah.
I wonder if I'm the only one who knows about 21st century apocalyptic comics. So I was like, I wonder how many apocalyptic comics we'll talk about from the 20th century as compared to the 21st century.
Well, I think a lot of the stuff, the most recent one I have is Geiger. Now, what you're bringing up is I'm aware of what's out there over the last couple of years. And believe it or not, there are tons of post-apocalyptic comics going on.
And one of my, I can't remember, it was either this summer or last summer, somebody's like, you've got an entire post-apocalyptic week.
Well, yeah. Oh, gosh. See, I wish you knew we were going to bring this up and I would have had it straight in my head, but is it James Tynion the Fourth? Is that a writer or an artist?
Yeah, he's a writer. Jim Tynion. Is he the third or the fourth? I don't remember. I've got some of his stuff.
It's the fourth. There's a dude that's got a name similar to him that's an artist that gets mixed up in my head. Right?
He writes Department of Truth that I read.
Yeah. Well, I think I don't know, maybe Boom or Dynamite, one of those two, but he's come out with like 3 or 4 post-apocalyptic books. One's called The Medic, where it's a sloth that'll throw a meme out at you, and the meme slowly drives you crazy. So he's, to me, in my mind, when I read that description, he's affected by modern horror. You know what I mean? That's a modern horror technique in some movies and stuff.
Right.
But there are there's been a ton of post-apocalyptic books out.
So many.
Yeah.
Tons.
But like you pointed out, you're the guy that I've reached an age where I got a lot to read. I want to reread some things. I'm reading real books. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I don't have time for mediocrity.
No, there's plenty of good comics out there. They're just harder to find.
Very hard to find. I said that in my last live show,
right.
Whatever I did. I don't know if it was a haul video or a rainy Sunday. I think I had to clarify that there are good books, but God, they're so hard to.
I think in the last, like this week, I got, let's see. Well, there and the last, someone had said to me recently, "Wow, you buy a lot of #1 issues," and I'm like, "That's because I'm an indie collector, so a lot of the books I buy are so are Marvel and DC, but a lot of the books I buy are sort of mini-series. They're short-term books, so it's like I'm always looking for, my pull list may fill up and then empty out, and then fill up, and then empty out like twice a year.
Yeah. Right.
So I'm always looking for new stuff to put on my pull list and read.
The gray man is here.
And only about half of I wouldn't even say half, maybe a third of the first issues end up on my pull list.
Yeah.
But it's like people don't want to do that.
Well, we're going to stay on theme for while we wait for more viewers to come on. Don't get me wrong. Gray man's here. What's up, brother? But, it's one of those things where I got no problem with people wanting to keep it going and saying, pointing out there's good books, but nobody's really doing reviews, at least in my circles. And I'm not saying they're not on YouTube or out there.
Right.
And I might have one longtime friend, and I've talked about the people in the real world out here that I go to conventions with. I mean, I got a circle and a group and stuff. Maybe one person's getting like 3 or 4 new titles a year, and that's it.
Wilson,
so when we do this, it's retro stuff. All right. Yeah. Let's see if we can get it to where we're not all on top of each other.
There we go. Good evening, Wilson. How are you doing?
Hello.
So Wilson, what do you know about post-apocalyptic comics? I got a table full here.
That's our theme for the evening.
So I've been thinking about what do I have, and I don't have much because then what's the definition?
Yeah,
Because
that we were
that's where
talking
I
about that.
think that could be a possible problem.
Well,
And I don't have as many trade paperbacks on the subject as I thought I did, and the ones that I do have, I don't have easily available.
I got us
So
covered tonight. I got us covered.
okay,
Now I looked up the definition. It's funny you said that because I looked up the definition of dystopia before when we brought up this
now
theme.
hold on.
Yep.
Dystopia is different than post-apocalyptic.
Yes, it is. I'm about to tell you the
That's the
definition of
last
dystopia.
American.
But
okay,
what I found out as I was thinking about it, which is why I dropped it in the thread, is not all. How did I have? Oh God, I had it in my head straight, man. Not all dystopia is post-apocalyptic,
Right,
but all post-apocalyptic could be dystopian.
right.
All right.
And then
okay.
there's stuff we discussed. I brought up Scout, which is really more of that's another
That's
genre, a
dystopia.
long, slow decline genre. The
Yep.
Scout didn't take place there was no apocalypse, but America, the United
Mm.
States of America, was in a long, slow decline.
See, what I started finding out is I've post-apocalyptic has always been one of my favorite things because first of all, I was a kid in the 80s.
Right.
In 1978, I watched Wizards, which is a
Mhm.
post-apocalyptic story with mutants and fairies a million years after it happened. And then I used to actually pray that if we made it past 1984 with no nuclear war, it wasn't going to happen. So my people my age, and this was a thing in school,
Oh
we
yeah.
actually had the fear. So
Oh
now when I
yeah.
see a generation today that was freaking out that we might go to war with North Korea or this might happen or this is that, I'm sitting here going, first time, huh? Yeah. You know,
Yeah, yeah. I'm from that same age group. As the joke goes, as Gen Xers, we prepared for a war that never happened.
Uh-huh.
Kind of a thing. So in my mind, it was like, what is it comic book wise that would even fall into those categories? And again, the funny thing about it is that certain books were in that world, but it don't always takes place in that world. The one that comes to mind real quick is X-Men's Days of Future Past.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
Because
dystopian.
that's one of those that shows it to you. And then when I was looking for books, I could not find my copy of Project Candace, which was books that took place under the I think it was Marvel 2-in-1, which was the Thing teamed up with other
Right.
characters. It was like Marvel team up, but with the Thing.
Mhm.
And there was a set of books that took place where you had, I believe that was the first introduction or one of the introductions of Deathlock, who
Yep.
came back in time to try to stop something from
Yeah.
happening.
That was
And
one of the first Deathlock stories after his original series.
right. So you have that trade paperback, which I couldn't find.
I got
And
it.
then branching away from Marvel, um, I have here the Foot Soldiers. Now I
Ah.
don't know if you guys ever read this
I
early
have not
in
read that. That's
Hold
James
on.
Kruger wrote that?
Jim Kruger wrote this at Marvel. But he printed it through DC. I'm sorry, he printed it through what would eventually become Image. But these are marked as alternate planet.
Okay. Maybe they came out at another time.
It's very well possible. Or this might have been the first people that did the trade
Because
paperbacks.
that's
Uh,
creator owned, right?
it's creator owned, yes. So these were in black and white. And this takes place in a future where all the superheroes had died. And these kids basically they know where the superheroes are buried. So they go there to steal parts of the costumes and stuff like that to get to get powers from it. And they're being chased. And it's early Jim Kruger writing. This is before Marvel X and stuff like that. So I
Right.
thought that was kind of cool to show. And
Nope.
then, huh?
It's funny. I was just thinking about Jim Kruger and how I never got to meet him.
Oh, really? Huh?
Only because only because he joined one of our Marvel groups recently. And I was like, "Oh yeah, Jim Kruger," because Jim Kruger, who wrote Earth X with Alex Ross.
Yeah,
He
I just
he
realized Earth
worked
X is a post-apocalyptic because it had a cataclysmic event.
right. He
It's
worked
post.
down on the ninth floor. What was his job?
I don't recall, and I
Was he
worked
in
right next to him on the
advertising?
ninth floor. It was the advertising portion. He was, I think, he might have been doing copywriting with the guys that were part of that group. When I came in Marvel, I came in through the ninth floor, working with the conventions department. So those guys who were doing the house ads and stuff like that were on that floor, and Jim was there on that floor.
But
So I know Jim through that. But I don't
people
know
used
his.
to always say to me, "Oh, Jim Kruger, this," or Jim. Whenever I was at Marvel, I was like, "Oh, I don't." They're like, "You don't know Jim? You should meet him." And I was like, "Okay," and somehow I never met him.
He never made it down to the ninth floor.
I never made it down to the ninth floor to meet him. I was just like, so every time I see him, I'm like, I never met him. How did I never meet him?
Great
So
guy, very friendly. Talked to
Everybody
him.
said nice things about him all the time. They always said, "Oh, you should meet him."
62 Lefty Blues. I bought that one trade paperback you have in blue from Jim at the
Ah,
2002 Dragon Con. He signed it. 62.
that
And
is
he also
cool.
followed up with Omen Drew for Jim before getting to Powers.
Yes.
Ah,
Now, Mike Omen, we're going to stay on track, but Omen is somebody like I really messed up because I don't script my videos, but I was doing Powers and I did the history of Powers, that book when it came out, how it was a
uh-huh.
little bit of a phenomenon, and then how people saw Omen's art and at first did not like it. They thought it was a poor man's Bruce Timm. I didn't
Uh-huh.
I didn't insert the next sentence where I said they came to love the man. Guess who
Ah.
watched my video about 2 weeks later and left a "gee, thanks" comment on there?
Uh,
Yeah. So if we're going to be like, maybe we can go backwards a little bit here and stuff, right? But the one we were talking about, all the post-apocalyptic stuff out there,
Geiger.
I ended up checking out Jeff Johns' Geiger,
Right.
and basically it's just an apocalyptic world. There's this weird little kid who's a king who's rebuilt a city, sort of, and he's like Joffrey from Game of Thrones is what he reminds me of. But Geiger, I thought I had the first issue. I probably have it put up. Anyway, Geiger is this dude who glows green. You can see his skeleton, much like the atomic skull from Superman, if you will.
He's radioactive.
Yeah. And he lives out in the shelter that he didn't get his family in. There's a whole thing.
Yeah.
But when I read this, I was like, Jeff Johns has gotten a little bit weird. It's like he's wanting to be Alan Moore. He's got a weird pacing in this. Gary Frank draws his heart out. And I felt like this was like, is he trying to go for a show? And guess what happened about 3 months later? They announced a show. It got picked up. And I'm like,
Junkyard Joe, I've enjoyed more than Geiger.
Yeah.
I thought Geiger was a solid B, but the Junkyard Joe, I like. Well, that brings me to like the definition of post-apocalyptic. Geiger is definitely post-apocalyptic. Something happened. The great, I don't know what.
Well, let me give
darkening,
you the definition of dystopia. Let's start there.
Okay, dystopia, which is different than post-apocalyptic.
Post-apocalyptics where there's a catastrophic event. Nature, we go with nuclear war because of all the Mad Max movies and being from the 80s. You hear me, Wilson? Right?
Yep.
You got it. So dystopia is an imagined state, an imagined state or society in which there's a great suffering or injustice, typically one that is totalitarian or post-apocalyptic. So all post-apocalyptic could be this, you don't have to have a catastrophic event.
Like
so when you have books like Scout and stuff and V, nothing really happened. It was just society crumbling and going to a totalitarian state.
But the thing about Scout, the thing about Scout is they're nowhere near there. It's not quite a dystopia, which is why I think it's the long, slow decline towards dystopia. I don't know if there's a word for that.
Well, let me slow it down. Scout, and see, this is what's killing me. When we came up with this theme yesterday, I realized I'm getting old, brother. I haven't read some of these books in over a decade.
Oh, longer than that.
But so I had to really, grain of salt. But Scout, what happened is where America, I don't know if it was political or whatever it was, but there all of a sudden, oh God, what's the word I'm looking for? Anyway, we weren't allowed to trade or sell to other countries. They refused to deal with America.
Right.
So our
So we were
country got
embargoed.
poorer and poorer and poorer. And
Right.
that's how you got to the state of Scout, which is about Emmanuel Santana, I think it was his name, an Apache, and he's out there in the wastelands in the desert and shit. You know, playing Mad Max with no
Living his
nuclear war,
life.
basically. Yeah.
Here's an observation I read about post-apocalyptic fiction just a few years ago. And I wanted to ask Paolo something about this too. That I read, and I have another thought on it too. When someone said Americans are kind of obsessed with post-apocalyptic fiction because our ancestors are moved into a post-apocalyptic world. The apocalypse happened to the natives of North and South America. They were wiped out, and the Europeans just kind of moved in behind them.
We knew you were joking, Jonathan. We knew you were joking. Go ahead.
Yeah. We're not old, it's experience.
Yeah. So it's like American, it's like our ancestors moved into a post-apocalyptic world. And a lot of the and I never thought of that before, but I'm like, that's true, because it's like 90% of the natives were wiped out in North or South America because of disease, and the Europeans just kind of moved in behind. It was like the Europeans would move in, and then the European plague would hit the Indians and like wipe out.
Well,
I was just discussing like the Comanche. They were one of the last powerful groups of Indians in the 1800s to like 1870. They used to, all throughout the Southwest and into Mexico, the Comanches would raid. They'd get 100 horsemen and go into Mexico and raid there. And that's how they lived until one day, I forget which disease it was, in like 1860 or 1870, just wiped out the Comanche. And that was like the end of Comanche power.
Yeah.
Was not the army, it was disease.
What you're looking at is the historical aspect,
right? The historical aspect.
I think a lot of fascination now comes from the fear of the 50s and the 60s, the Cold War, and all that stuff. But because of all that, we got romanticized films where you could be the action star with a lot of freedom and have all your debt wiped out and be on the road, you know, living like a vagabond. There's a romanticized thing of escaping your responsibilities and all your debt, and you being somebody else now. I think that's a generational thing. What you're talking about, I think, is for people who are into history and probably
No, I don't even think it's into history, because here's where it's not that. And this is where I wanted to ask Paolo about something too. I would say your average American knows very little about history. And that's very post-apocalyptic. When you think about it, part of what happens in the apocalypse is you lose your history. And think about how we as Americans are taught history compared to, I'll ask Paolo, how Europeans are taught history. Our history, when you go into history class in like high school and junior high, you get a little bit about 1492, and then history starts in 1776. And goes from there. So it's like we are not taught any history about the land we live on before 1776, just about. Sometimes we go to the French and Indian War, and when was that, the 1750s?
Yeah, we're kind of taught how we got America.
Yeah.
In pieces. But we have we have the historical
I have a retort when you're ready.
Of getting America. Because we had to save America from everything.
And also,
and
when you think about the Europeans who came to America, the apocalypse happened to them too. Think about being a European. Like, the apocalypse definitely happened to the Irish during the famine in the mid 1800s, when a lot of them had to leave. But think about, you're a European in, I don't know, 1786. And you're moving, you and your family, to the United States of America. That generally means you never hear from anyone back home again. It's just like that life ends and a new life starts. In a way, it's a minor family apocalypse. So I think there's a lot of apocalypse.
Well, let me go ahead, Paolo.
I don't think you can describe an apocalypse like that. And even if you disconnect from your family because you immigrated,
it's a different sort of thing. But I think that adds to the obsession with the apocalypse.
The European history. European history goes through a lot of societal collapses and conquests and empires ending. So, our history classes start being taught in around 1200 BC, which was when the Celts arrived in the Iberian Peninsula and the Iron Age started. Because before that, during the Bronze Age, we didn't really have any sort of developed society. We had settlements, we had bronze, we had animal husbandry, but we were lacking something that would give us power to change the environment in any meaningful way, which happens when you get iron, because now you have real warfare. But we're used to having societal collapses.
That's what I mean. That's what. There's apocalypses happen. I'm just saying, here in the U.S., there was one big apocalypse that we moved.
But it's not your apocalypse. It's. I think I'm going more to Tim's idea that this started during the Cold War, because the United States became the world superpower after World War II, and for some strange reason, when your civilization reaches superpower status, people inside it start dreaming up how to tear it down. Mm-hmm. It happened with the Roman Empire. It happened with the Holy Roman Empire, which was the Austrian Habsburg dynasty, which allowed the Prussians to take over and become the main German power.
But part of my point is, I would say 9 out of 10 Americans would have no idea what you're talking about.
No, but that's not it. The mere fact that the United States is a superpower is what leads the people inside it start dreaming up how to tear it down.
I'm not saying that's untrue. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying I think part of American culture is we're such a young country that we don't have, our past is like when take me for example. Besides, I'm an outlier because I'm a
Jared. I'm just going to give you a heads up. In a few minutes, I'm going to steer it back to comics just to let you know.
But I'm English, Irish, Scottish, Dutch, German, Polish, and French Canadian. That means I've got no ethnicity besides American. It's like I don't like some Americans, like if you're Italian, if you're like, you might know the history of your family back in Italy, but most Americans don't know anything besides their family history going back a couple generations.
I gotta go. I've got to go. We'll get back to comics here. I'm not going to try to get like a last word or anything like that. We're going to steer it back to comics because we're going all over the place, and it's a comic book show. It's in the title, But basically, the thing is that I worked in several schools across the state for 6 years, and I was contracted to the schools, not part of the school system. So I'm an outsider on the inside, right? But I'm also going to point out that Virginia is where everybody landed. Jamestown, all that stuff. We know the history before in 1776 it was taught to us and all that stuff. Now, the last 12 years in schools, I don't know. But so you're both right. I agree with you, and I also think there's an argument. It depends what they're deciding to teach. Does it go on the SATs? Does it? Is there a? It used to be you got an education. Now a lot of schools teach for you to take a test called an SAT to fund the school. So yeah, you're both right, and I don't want to use the word wrong. It's not the right term.
It's just an observation. It's not.
Your observation is both on point, but if you see other schools in other states and how they teach and how they do things, it's being taught, but it's not a level playing field everywhere. That's the problem. The SATs give some schools more money, thus they have more resources, thus they can expand on what they're talking about.
I had a good school. I'm one of those schools that had the money. So imagine, so I know what I was taught. And like I said, I'm a history buff though, so I learned a lot. I've been learning all these years. But I used to talk to other people who went to other schools, and they weren't taught anything. I'm just like, whoa.
Okay.
Well, let me put it to this: unless you have an important ancestor, all of your family's oral history disappears within 120 to 150 years.
That's what I was
because
wondering.
it's when your grandparents die, and they stop telling you about their grandparents.
Right.
So now there's a bunch of grandparents disappearing.
That's why I wanted to talk to Paolo and ask him what sort of sense of history there is.
Yeah, the sense of history is cultural. It's not family related.
Well,
my
ancestors we're on the same page here.
Yeah, my ancestors were peasants.
Yeah.
So there's no family history there to remember. We didn't do anything.
Okay.
In order to fish my family's history, I will have to go through very old church baptismal records and see and to find out what my peasant ancestors lived, where there was peasants their whole life. So nobody actually did anything. Okay. No, nothing was written down. When we discuss our history, is what the great men, the great kings, the great generals did. So and those are the ones that stay for history. But the one thing that's important here was that the fall of the Eastern Roman Empire in the 5th century, which started being discussed internally around the 2nd and 3rd century. The Eastern, the one that was in Rome, the Byzantines. Or the West? No, I'm sorry, the Western Roman Empire.
That's what I thought.
The Western Roman Empire. The Byzantines were the Easterns.
Right.
And the adoption of Christianity as the official state religion of the Roman Empire hastened their demise, because for the first 400 years, Christianity was essentially a death cult. They were searching for the end of the world.
They still are.
Hold on, I'll tell you what. I want to stop right there. We're 27 minutes in. We've shown 2 comics. We were up to 8 people. It dropped to 2, and we're going between 2 and 5 because people are checking to see if we're showing comics.
All right. Well, I'm going to show a comic. Speaking of comics that are so old.
Is it post-apocalyptic, Jared? Is it post-apocalyptic?
I think it is.
All right.
I think it is. But I haven't read it in so long, I'm not 100% sure. That's Saber by Don McGregor and Paul Galisi.
Well,
is this post-apocalyptic? I can't.
Well, hold on. Talk about the book real quick. How old? When did the book come out? Who's on it? And what's
1983?
Paolo jumps in.
No, 1978. You have a later printing.
83. Yeah. This version is 78. No, this version is 1988, but it's Story and Art 1978. So this is a reprint.
Yeah, I have the 30th issue, the 30th anniversary issue, which is digest size, but it's hardcover.
Hold on.
I think it's post-apocalyptic, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah.
First of all, what I want to say is I have been picking up a lot of Paul Galisi stuff here lately. Covers on
this is some solid Paul Galisi stuff.
6 from Cyrus. I mean,
6 from Sirius.
Yeah.
I never read that book, but I always thought it was something. I always thought it was like a 70s cowboy type thing. I never read the book. I've only ever seen covers and stuff like that. And I know I own an issue of the regular comic book, because I think Pacific printed some for a while. So I have, I think, the first issue. But I never I don't think I ever read it, so I didn't realize that it might have been
the graphic novel is 40 pages, so they repurposed the graphic novel as the first 2 issues of the ongoing series. But they only reprint the graphic novel. They never reprint the rest of the stories. Okay. I kind of see that like a bit like Deathlock, which is seems to be that they're in a localized area. There was some sort of apocalypse, but in Saber, it's not important that apocalypse happened. It's like it's a bit like they're in the world of Logan's Run, but without the people committing suicide.
There's a fold-out color page. I didn't even know that was in here. Just be a poster.
All right, guys.
I pulled this one out just because
what about that makes you think it's post-apocalyptic? What's the plot? What happened?
I do not remember, but flipping through it, they've got like future flying cars, they've got horses, they've got people in a coliseum fighting to the death. They've got guys with swords.
They've got genetic engineering, but they seem to have no functional hospitals.
Guys are on sailing ships.
Yeah, so it looks like they live in a post-apocalyptic world, but the point of the story is not post-apocalyptic.
Okay. All right. I tell you what, let me throw three out here real quick because they each lead into each other. And it kind of goes where we were 20 minutes ago when we were talking about dystopia and stuff, post-apocalyptic. So, and I'm going to do like quick on these, right? Mm-hmm. So if you haven't read OMAC, this is dystopia. You got
One Man Army Corps.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you got Buddy Blank, who's oppressed and, poor little man's job. And they go through, it's the rich. This gets in the socio-economic classes. And basically this was Captain America of the future that Kirby came up with around the late 60s. If Marvel hadn't, if they had treated him better, this character could have been a Captain America story of the future. Okay. So it led up to him trying to stop some kind of big disaster going on. He had missions and stuff. And they kind of tied it all together. I don't know how much Kirby did this or what they did after he left the book, but it led into Commandy that was coming out at the same time. Commandy is the post-apocalyptic comic. I mean, let's face it. You know what I mean? Like the great disaster happened. We never knew what it was. If you want to know what the world looks like, go watch the Thunder of the Barbarian cartoon. You know what I mean? Like,
by the way, it was a really dumb idea to tie that into DC continuity. I don't know why they did this. They decided they wanted to.
They did that to Kirby. Everybody did that to Kirby. He had Eternals, which was its own thing. They made it tied into Marvel, and it made no sense when you read the Eternals.
But Commandy especially bothers me because it means all the superheroes failed.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Well, not only did they fail, they failed in the year it came out. If you look at the structures, if you listen to him talk about microfiche living in that bunker, after the apocalypse, the great disaster hit, he's reading the first issue of Demon in the book. He's already established that this is out. That's what established this was its own universe. He's reading DC comics he's finding.
Right.
And then in issue 29, they bring in the Superman suit. And Kirby was very smart. He never said if it was Superman or George Reeves' outfit from the TV show. You know what I mean?
I was perfectly happy with Commandy being its own continuity. Made sense. When they decided to make it part of the DC continuity, I was just like, what do you got to do in that? Like it especially bothered me because that means all the DC heroes failed.
Well, look, if you want
to prevent the great disaster.
Okay, so
all a bunch
let me bounce off that. We can revisit this book later, but not only it's okay that the DC, if they did do that, it's okay that the DC ones failed because oh man, I got too many books out here. That also means that if you go back and read Future Imperfect, it not only did the heroes fail, but they went around, they picked up their remains and they put them in a museum in Rick Jones's little bunker there in a post-apocalyptic world. The Marvel.
But that to me, that's okay because Marvel always just says, it's an alternate world.
Yeah, every alternate future in Marvel exists for it to be stopped.
Right. So it's like, but DC is supposed to be that one continuity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when Crisis merged everything, I don't think they quite understood the moral implications of putting future stories as set in continuity. One thing that you don't want to do when you're creating new stories is say, well, it doesn't matter what these guys are doing because in 200 years everyone will be dead. Yeah.
Well, as a seasoned reader at the age of 12, when Crisis came out, I was reading the Commandy stuff. I've told the story. OMAC #1 was the book I had to flip over. That was my stepdad's, because Kirby work freaked me out, scared me. But I also, when I started realizing that they had pulled into that Commandy into like continuity, and I couldn't figure out how OMAC fit in and how the Legion fit in. I knew, what I mean. As a little kid, this was like pissing me off because I didn't have the words. I couldn't come up with the logic and the big picture. Yet, when Crisis on Infinite Earths #2, I think, came out, and you had George Perez drawing Commandy on the cover, I found peace. I I found peace. At the moment I let it go. I remember letting it go at 12.
I also think writing the future in was like counter to the spirit of Crisis on Infinite Earth. Crisis on Infinite Earths was supposed to simplify anything and open up the future for writers and artists. And all of a sudden, they didn't have to worry about the continuity, the past. So the future of DC was open for all sorts of new stories. Instead, they went, oh no, it all leads to Commandy, and then it's like, what?
Well,
from a creative standpoint, it's not that important because they weren't using Commandy, they weren't using the Great Disaster.
No, they weren't.
The only thing that was setting the future, no, they weren't really.
Which makes it even dumber in my mind.
Yeah, right. So, but it really doesn't matter.
You're right.
You were free to ignore it, and then the guys in 0 Hour would sort it out.
Yeah,
why not?
You're right.
The only thing that we're
I just thought it was a dumb idea. I don't know why they just keep mentioning it every few years, and it's just like, stop.
Yeah, the only problem that they had was that they had to figure out how to incorporate the Legion of Superheroes.
Yeah,
because that one was still going on.
Yeah,
and that there were even other things that they had. They stopped it. No more Warlord.
But at least with the Legion, it took place way in the future, and everyone was happy.
Well, Jared, I'm going to pop in here. Guess who tried to fix everything you're talking about in a horrible 12-issue?
Mark Waid?
Who was it?
Jeff Johns.
I just grabbed a few out of the box, okay? But it was just Superman Batman Generation 3 by John Byrne.
He's always trying to fix continuity. I've
got his OMAC miniseries here, as I was going to pull that out here in a minute and stuff like that and everything. But in the 90s, John Byrne really got into time travel. And there you go. That's problems right there. But what he did in this story is he got cute. He had a story going forward who were meeting characters who were moving in the past. And Superman gets trapped at some point. He has kids and he gets trapped in Supertown, can't come to Earth. And he actually fleshed it out to where I can't quite remember what happened, but all electronics would not work. So we had our first great disaster. Then we had the Commandy shit. And he fit that in there. Then we had the world rebuilding and we're able to use electricity again and stuff like that. And we start building into the world of the Legion. Then he went beyond that. So he did this thing where he kind of Mark Grunwald some of the DC stuff in an imaginary tale that's not continuity. And this is so hard to get through, but I mean, the first generation's 4-issue miniseries, I highly recommend. The second one, sure, it was fun, but this third one where we got 12 issues, you're like, what the fuck?
Now, this type of chronology building. Now I want to talk. I want to bring up the Walt Newton universe. It's always a good idea to bring up the Walt Newton universe. In the Walt Newton universe, Legion of Superheroes is actually the future of Star Trek. And Star Trek is post-apocalyptic in its own way, because even though everyone is traveling around space in shiny spaceships, there was an apocalypse event with the augments and nuclear war in Colonel Green's Optimum movement. Which is the type of thing that only Trekkies know about.
Wait. Throw that name out again. I know a little track. I know Earth had breached
the Optimum movement.
Yeah.
So those are the guys that were the followers of the augments, even though they were normal humans.
Yeah.
They were the guys that took drugs. You know when
genetic
Q.
wars. Yeah. There was the genetic wars, I think, that had Khan. And then they had what you're talking about, because they actually showed that era on the pilot episode of the Next Generation. Then it came into the world where, like, I can't remember. I couldn't figure out if we had like a great disaster or what, but something happened where we got the warp drive and the Vulcans saved us. That's basically what happened.
Here's did you showed Future Imperfect before?
Yeah.
Did you read this? I think it was last year they came out with a continuation of that series.
They're doing a set of miniseries, 2-3 of them that Peter David returned.
Right.
And he's showing how the how the Hulk took over after the war.
Did you read any of those?
I've got the first one, and I might get the other ones in trade. They're all right. You know, they're all right.
I read some of them. I think I read the first series.
Yeah.
And you know what's weird? The biggest problem I had with it was it upset me to read a story where the Hulk was the villain.
The Hulk started out as a villain, my friend.
I was really like, oh man, I don't think I like this.
No, man. The Hulk if you go back and read it, the Hulk started out as a villain. We're just on his side because we're right beside him in the story. They got around the Comics Code authority of where you could not show the military or America being the bad guy. But yet, who's chasing the Hulk?
Right.
General Ross and the army. The Hulk actually is the bad guy there for a while, but we knew he was a misunderstood monster, you know.
Right. But reading the latest, like, it's well done too. I mean, it's not like it's bad. It just I just found it, you know, a little frustrating, and I don't think I didn't try reading this. I was just like, you know, it just upsets me to read because I'm not on his side when he's the villain. I'm just like, oh man.
Well, it's okay. They brought in Dr. Doom and I think Namor, so he ended up fighting some bad people.
The Hulk is clearly the villain.
It's upsetting because of the power levels.
Yeah.
Hulk in 1963 does not appear to be that strong when compared to Hulk in the 1990s. Because it's normal, they keep upping up the strength of every character.
Well, Future Imperfect, now the Hulk is able to absorb all of that radiation constantly, thus getting stronger. Apparently, nuclear radiation and gamma radiation similar. You know,
it doesn't kill you. It doesn't give you cancer. No.
So do you want to see the one post-apocalyptic story that was so depressing for the guy that wrote it, he never finished it, and his son ended up picking it up?
What is it?
The Great Cobalt 60 by Von Bode.
I have never read that.
I don't even think I know anything about that. Although the art and logo looks familiar.
Oh, I learned about Von Bode, I think, in the early issues of Epic Illustrated. They did a couple of articles.
Okay.
Issue 27, I think. This is, I think, right here behind these.
It was that late?
Epic Illustrated.
27?
I think, it ran through the features, but I remember 27 through the 30s as a kid. I mean, I read them. Okay. I discovered Von Bode through Wizards, trying to figure out, you know, that was his art style. Came across Cheats Wizard, his lizard and stuff as I was growing up in these head shop books that my stepdad had, you know what I'm saying? And then thanks to YouTube, I finally got to see like Von Bode, the actual Von Bode in a college class where he's doing I'm trying to think what he's doing. I think he's it's not a PowerPoint. We're in the freaking 70s. But anyway, he's showing pictures of his work and he's doing voices of the lizard and Cheats and then cutting hippie jokes. But this basically was a revenge story. He doodled this in the late 50s, this character, Cobalt. Now look at this. This is something he came up in the 50s. I don't know somebody that innovative with such a unique style in the middle of that era. I think Frank Frazetta. You know, that's somebody with such a unique take on this stuff. But basically, this is just a revenge story. It's a post-apocalyptic world where somebody killed his parents, so he's going out there to kill them. That's the whole plot. And then, like I said, he didn't finish it because this world actually depressed him. You know, so he didn't finish the story, and then the son took it over.
The question here: was Bode involved with the animated movie Wizards?
I have no idea. I don't know when he passed. I can't remember. Bode is somebody that I was more about the art than the person.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure in the 70s he committed suicide. So I don't think he made it to then. If a grain of salt Crack's out there, Crack might know.
He just said, I heard Cobalt talk. Was Bode involved with the animated movie Wizards?
Yeah. I mean, we could Google it and find out, but I've never really thought about checking it out because I know Mike Plug was involved. One of the animators who work on Tom and Jerry was involved. They got a documentary series on the Wizards DVD, and Von Bode, I don't remember him being mentioned at all. To be helpful.
I got a new comic this week, yesterday. I can't decide if this one. No, Baudet was dead. 62 Lifty Blue says. I want to know. I'm not sure if this one counts as post-apocalyptic. There was definitely apocalypse. The story is All Against All is the comic. I bought it because Casper Wingard is the artist. I've been following him for a little while now. Okay, there's these aliens, and they're like jellyfish or a brain with, and they take over other creatures' bodies. So it's like they wear their jellyfish head and sits on your head, and they got tentacles that go down, and they now.
That's not post-apocalyptic, Jared.
Well, hold on a second.
It's science fiction.
Let me explain this to you. They've conquered a lot of, I don't know, the galaxy, the whatever. But now some other race is coming and conquering them. So they're looking for new bodies, better bodies to help them conquer these other aliens. And so they go to Earth. The problem is the apocalypse has already happened on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no life left on Earth. But they find these genetic banks where we stored our animal DNA and human DNA and food DNA. So they've started raising a bunch. They started creating Earth animals again, including human beings, who is our lead. So I'm not sure if he's I guess he's kind of like Commandy, the last guy on Earth, and he's well, let me show you this.
I want to put this in it. See, the same thing happened to Thundercats. They arrived on Earth millions of years after a post-apocalyptic event.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm going to have to say no.
There is an apocalypse, and it takes place after, and there's one human being left.
The apocalypse does not concern the characters in that story.
Yeah. It's like Thundercats. The Thundercats arrived on Earth millions of years after something post-apocalyptic, and thus Mumra is the last human. And it's about the Thundercats and them. It's a setting. You have a sci-fi story with a setting of a destroyed Earth.
Yeah. That's what I also think. One of my favorite comics, Carla Speed McNeil's The Finder, is once again they live in the. It's sort of post-apocalyptic in the terms of so much time has passed that they live in these cities, a lot of them, and there's also people who live outside, but they live in these domed cities, but they don't know how to fix the dome. And sometimes machines come out and fix the dome and do it, but they don't know who made the machines. But they've got tech. They're not suffering in any way. Yeah. They're not in a dystopia. They just live in this really old landscape where the people who made the stuff are long gone, and they don't even know who they are. So I was like, I don't know if that's post-apocalyptic or just something different.
It's not.
I found that. But it's a great comic if you never read it. The Finder by Carla Speed McNeil.
Let's see. Wilson showed. Yeah, go ahead, Wilson.
With comics, what I also found interesting, the ones that I gravitated to originally were the ones that were tied into something else. So I remember reading some of the Planet of the Apes.
Right.
Trying to get whatever more information that I couldn't get from the movies, or I couldn't get from the cartoon show, because the cartoon show gave us a lot of information as well. Plus, the cartoon show was kind of drawn like a comic book. So
Doug Wildley worked on it. That's why I like the comic book.
Here's a question. Was Planet of the Apes post-apocalyptic before the Statue of Liberty?
I don't understand what you're saying.
It was.
We look back at the Planet of the Apes and see it as a post-apocalyptic movie. But if you were watching it for the first time, you wouldn't think that.
No. It's definitely. Wait a minute. I don't say that again. Make sure I understand.
We didn't know the Planet of the Apes was a post-apocalyptic movie until the big reveal at the end.
If you read the book, you do know. Okay. But what Rod Serling did when he came in and did the script is that's actually a Twilight Zone movie. He restructured the story to where you had a reveal like the Twilight Zone at the end. Then the second one dealt with the last nuclear bomb where they
That
actually blew up
second
the
one
world.
definitely post-apocalyptic. Is the first one movie actually post-apocalyptic?
Yeah,
Yeah, because you have to take the movie, I think, as a whole. That by the end, it's gone.
Yeah.
Whatever.
See,
Oh.
basically what happened, Wilson. I mean, I can jump on here, but I mean, go ahead. And
Some movies transform when you see the end of them, like Fight Club. I think Planet of the Apes is one of those movies. If you're watching Planet of the Apes for the first time, knowing nothing about it, it's not a post-apocalyptic movie until the end, where it's transformed into a post-apocalyptic movie.
The magic.
But that's the whole movie, though. But that still has to be taken as a whole. You know, because
I'm saying, but you can only take it as a whole after you've seen the whole movie. As you're watching the movie, it's not a post-apocalyptic movie.
You have to have.
I think it is, because there are kind of like hints throughout the movie.
Yeah, but you don't know that
happen. But something did happen to the humans on the planet.
Okay,
because you did see pieces of old humanity's habitats. The doll shows you humans.
Once again,
on that planet.
At the end, when it's revealed.
No. Because before we even know that, we just know that the humans went through an apocalypse on that planet. We didn't know it was Earth yet.
No, we didn't know they went through an apocalypse.
Hold on. Yeah,
hold on. We did when we saw the ruins.
Yeah. What I'm going to bounce off what Wilson's saying here. We're not going to like pile on you, Jared. Okay, but
no, I'm just saying. Hold on. That stuff you're saying took place at the end of the movie. That's when it transformed into a post-apocalypse.
As the movie goes on, hold on, you are with the astronauts. You're discovering this world with them. They are the eyes and narrators of the people watching the movie.
They do not know an apocalypse happened.
Hold on. They slowly show you bits and pieces of a mystery. That's the hook. You want to make it to the end to see what happened here.
Right. So then it's a mystery, and then it becomes.
Let me finish, Jared. Let me finish. Right?
Okay.
So you get to play detective. This is a post-apocalyptic world because they're showing.
It's not.
Yes,
I disagree. It is not.
You're not letting me finish, Jared.
It's an alien world.
No,
they think they went. They don't know they're on Earth. They think they went to the planet of the apes.
So they land on the planet and they're talking about radiation levels. Then
they do not think They do not think they've landed on Earth.
They found ruins, and then they find humans who don't.
At no point. They at no point think they're on Earth.
Let me finish. I'm telling you the clues they give you. And
I'm just saying those clues don't make sense until the end, when it's revealed it's a post-apocalyptic movie.
But the first thing they do,
we're trying to figure out what happened to the people on that planet, which wasn't Earth.
The first thing they do is they talk about radiation levels that they're taking, and they're up. And then there's weird weather,
which you would do on any planet that you go to.
So there's weird weather, and then you find actual humans there. That's the first thing that tells you that this is either not Earth. Or
every space thing you go to a planet, there's humans on it.
Yeah.
That's nothing on you. That does not give you it away that it's post-apocalyptic.
Yeah. So basically it's still a post-apocalyptic world because
it's just a world. It's just an alien world they landed on. They don't know anything about the apocalypse.
Well, you're missing the subtext of what the monkeys are doing.
That subtext makes no sense until the reveal at the end. That's when all the subtext is transformed.
I don't know. I don't think so.
I think so.
I'm not too sure myself.
Because I can remember watching it for the first time. I didn't know it was post-apocalyptic until the end. That's why it's one of the most famous reveals in cinema history. Because that's what tells you what the movie was really about that you didn't know.
That's what makes it post-apocalyptic.
Yes,
if you don't know
until the end, but it's transformed into. I said it's such an unusual type of story. It's such an unusual situation.
You're talking about a reveal that they're on the planet of the Earth, not the post-apocalyptic aspect. That was the reveal that you're actually on Earth.
Yes, and an apocalypse happened. And that you're really on the Earth in the future.
They already knew something. They already knew something happened because of the.
Yes, but they didn't think it. And it didn't happen to an apocalypse that happens to someone else isn't an apocalypse to you. Right. The Romans killing off all the Gauls. That wasn't an apocalypse for the Romans. That was an apocalypse for the Gauls. So they didn't think that they suffered an apocalypse until the end, when they realized, oh, it was us who suffered the apocalypse. I just think it's a weird movie. Certain, like I said, Fight Club is the same way. When you reach the end of the Fight Club, something is revealed that transforms the whole movie. I think that happened in the Planet of the Apes too.
Sure.
Well, we see it as a post-apocalyptic. Now, of course, in hindsight, it's a post-apocalyptic movie. But watching it for the first time, it's not. It becomes. I mean, now there's no doubt. The whole, the second movie was about post-apocalyptic. Every movie since then has been a post-apocalyptic movie.
Right. Every movie basically
for the first time
tries to show how we got to that point. And that's the same thing with the, like I was mentioning with the comics, is that I was always find it fascinating to read comic books about events, and sometimes they don't do the event itself or what led up to the events. I was always fascinated by the Terminator comic books, because once the story is told, how many times have they been going back to get these people or get another group of people and stuff like that, where they're adding on to the lore that other things have happened to make it. And the one thing I want to mention, although they haven't done a comic book to it, kind of staying in movies, is that was Back to the Future showing you a fall of society just because Marty's dad dies? How much of the world changed, or was it just that town? Which I always found that in itself, story-wise, big. Can one person make a difference in that kind of sense? And then bringing it back to comics, the whole Age of Apocalypse. By killing just Professor X, you get a future that's totally, incredibly bad. But at the same time, it's like, what about all the other superheroes that would have running around at the time? Because for the X-Men, for Marvel, also being the lowest selling comic book for a while, why was Professor X himself so important that it basically destroyed the whole future that had all these superheroes there?
Especially because every Avengers fan will tell you that if Apocalypse fought the Avengers, they would kick Apocalypse's ass.
Friar Tuck kind of agrees with me in the Planet of the Apes. I haven't quite convinced him. He just kind of agrees with me.
Yeah, the thing is,
history.
In order to properly understand a story, we need to get to its end. So after watching the story, we derive the meaning from it. So the post-apocalyptic element will always be dominant in the discussion of the Planet of the Apes.
Right, because that's what it became. I'm just saying, when you're watching it for the first time, you don't know. It isn't. If you don't know it's apocalyptic, then it is in fact not.
Right, but it's perfectly.
But as soon as that end happens, it becomes. But that's so rare. It's rare that one kind of movie becomes another kind of movie because of the end. And without that ending, it's what, a science fiction movie?
Yeah. But the fact that the movie is adapted from a novel helps, because novels don't have to be told in the exact typical three arc story,
three act
story. So it can end with the big reveal, because it won't upset the reader in the same way. There are certain expectations of how the story is told in a visual, moving medium, where people are acting. So yeah, the thing, even if you read the novel Planète des Singes before you watched the Planet of the Apes movie,
which I think very few people did.
Yeah, probably.
I know I didn't.
I started it. I couldn't get into it. And I mean recently, like within the last 10 years, that I went out, I bought the book, and I started reading it, and it was just like it wasn't taking me anywhere. I just could not hold on to it. But going back to like with the Dark Knight Returns, is the apocalypse or the dystopian future just within Gotham?
Right.
Or is it the whole world is kind of messed up?
I don't know. I don't think it was ever. I haven't read it in so long. I have no clue.
The fact that the Reagan is still president means something must have happened to the political system.
Right.
So at least the United States are messed up.
Mm-hmm. And that was the thing that, like I was talking about before with the comic book stuff with Terminator. I remember picking up the Terminator books that were by, I think Dark Horse was putting them out for a short while, and again, it was just like these continuations of stories for movie adaptations. You know, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. And then I couldn't think of really much else comic book wise what I was reading that would give you a future insight.
I've got RoboCop Terminator. What is this? A gallery edition?
Yeah.
I think that's Walt Simonson was writing it.
Frank Miller, Walt Simonson.
Walt Simonson. Mm-hmm. And I like, because you know me, I like a crossover, and I like how they did make sense in that, where what happens with RoboCop is helps create the Terminator project. I believe that there is a connection with it that way.
Let me show you. There's an interesting production thing. I don't know if I ever told Wilson this before. There's an interesting production thing that Walter told me about this Terminator book. See, this is a normal artist edition. See how much wider this Terminator one is, even though it was just a normal comic. That was because, let me put this one back. There are some pages where I think there was no like blue line paper. Who put this out? Dark Horse or someone? There was no like blue line paper to tell Walter what size exactly to make these pages. So he put, especially with some of the sound effects, like this page right here, he put extra stuff on the side for the bleed.
Right.
So they could cut it off. But the production guy didn't know that. And he didn't want to cut off any of Walter's artwork. So he shrank down all the pages to fit all that stuff in. So when they were making this gallery edition, they wanted to fit in all Walter didn't know where to stop because there was no, so he just said, I'll put extra in and they can cut it off.
Right.
But they didn't cut it off. And so they put this one's extra wide to get the extra wide stuff that Walter put in so they could cut it off.
That is, to me, that is just so odd production wise on something like that. But
I was talking to Walter about it one day and I said, you know what? I know that production guy was like, I don't want to cut off Walter Simon's art. We're going to get in trouble for that. So he shrank it down.
Here's something here. Is this post-apocalyptic or is it just dystopian?
I think that's dystopian.
Dystopian.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, dystopian. Yeah. I had a big question mark, I think, on my list here when I was thinking about it too. So
yeah, because New York is seriously messed up.
And it's so local too, that one. We don't
it's very really local.
Know anything about the wider world.
In fact, you can even infer from the story that what's going on is that something happened to New York and it's just being kept for war games by the U.S. Army.
Yeah, it's like it's a military state. Thus, it would be totalitarian. Thus, it would be dystopia. That I drive a lot, so I think of these things. You know, I'm like,
that is still one of my favorite Marvel series from the 70s. Rich Buckler gets like put down all the time for swiping stuff, and I'm like, all his sins are forgiven because I like Deathlock so much.
Well, when Captain America shows up,
that's the
yes.
You have to stop your Deathlock reading with the end of the Astonishing Tales series. Everything after that makes no sense.
It does. But
Mike cover?
Yes,
yeah,
Mike.
But otherwise, the story doesn't end.
Yeah. Well, what it is too is Deathlock. The whole concept of Deathlock was For those of you who've never read it, it takes place in the far-flung future of 1990, and it's in a dystopia where Deathlock, what was his name? Manning?
Luther Manning.
Luther Manning was a very good soldier. He was one of the best soldiers, but he died. So they had this new project, which was going to be a cyborg. They wanted to, of course, build a super soldier because Marvel has always been obsessed with super soldiers. And so one of the things they were doing in order to drive this cyborg was they put part of Luther Manning's brain in the cyborg, and that went along with a computer. And that was supposed to be what sort of animates the body, and you can give it orders and it can go fight. But unexpectedly, Luther Manning was in there. So he came back. He was a zombie, essentially. Deathlock is essentially a zombie. His flesh is rotting. And so he comes back and he's talking to a computer, and they didn't expect him. They just wanted the military strategy part of his brain.
Yeah.
But instead they got him. So Deathlock is this dead guy caught in trapped in a dead body with a computer. And through most of the book, he's just trying to figure out why he exists and what's going on. As soon as the series was over and they brought him into the Marvel Universe proper, he just becomes a cyborg.
And the thing about it is what gives it substance. In reading it, I've never figured out if they did this on purpose or if they lucked up or if they read something and it kind of bled over just through the storytelling. But they got some pretty big themes in there that gives it substance.
Yeah.
Free will.
Right.
The idea of free will, he literally has something trying to take over his mind and his body.
Right.
The whole free will, the man versus machine theme, man versus nature theme a little bit. They got some themes in here that they touch on, but nothing's really fully explored. It's a constant battle for him to stay himself.
Right.
And then they lost that. The people who came in after that, it was just a character. What I mean?
They just made him a superhero. He was just a robot guy. And there's been no Deathlock like that. And they also did some interesting things creatively. Who was the letterer in that book? I forget who it was, but he lettered a computer typeface font. Like hand lettered, like an LED. It's amazing. I'm like, wow, that looks like it was a lot of work. Because whenever the computer talked, he lettered like this LED computer font.
Right.
Like, the irony there, that guy putting in all the work, is that it dated the book. Okay, I'm just saying.
That was drawn by Buckler. It was the letterer.
Oh, Buckler was the letterer? Oh wow.
No. Buckler was not the letterer.
Oh, not.
But the letterer did the regular speech bubbles.
Oh.
But the font was drawn by Buckler in the art.
Oh, okay. I did not know that.
Yeah.
And another thing they did, which is I've talked about this before, I think, on our show. One of the things they did that was really kind of innovative too, which I'd never seen before or after. Deathlock was supposed to be dead. He was not, he was not living. So his flesh isn't flesh colored. They put some purple in there. In his flesh, they put a little light purple, and especially mixing with the yellow of the paper, it came out sort of grayish. And as the paper aged, it got even grayer and grayer. So it's like you look at those issues of Deathlock now, and he looks very zombie dead gray. The problem is when they recolored it on this new paper, solid line screen, very solid, he now looks like lilac Deathlock.
Yeah,
because he's very lilac colored, and he's supposed to be gray, but which it looks like on the original newsprint. But I have a reprint of, I don't know if I have the Masterworks anymore, but it was just like, oh my God, he's lilac. He looks like lilac.
Deathlock was definitely like something special that they just they let it go. I mean, they had something there.
It was, it was water vapor in their hand. It just disappeared. They didn't even know they had it.
So I'm going to show something that is not only post-apocalyptic, it's post-apocalyptic. And on top of that, this is based on like action figures and Saturday morning cartoon shows of the 80s. He-Man, Black Star, mixed with Jack Kirby. John Scioli's hardback one-shot of American Barbarian. Basically, there's been 2 apocalypses. Okay, this is supposed to be like the America and the continent. And the dude runs around. He comes from a family where they'll have red, white, and blue hair because of the mutations from all the radiation and stuff. It's got villains and stuff in it, but he runs around with Black Star's freaking sword. And it's this like desolate and fighting in far, far flung future. And if you like Kirby and stuff like that, man, this is actually, to my mind, John Scioli's masterpiece because it's like Thundar, Black Star, He-Man, action.
Do you like it better than Godland?
Yeah. Godland was Joe Casey and Tom Scioli. This is all Tom Scioli.
Okay. That one's been on my Amazon wish list forever, but I still haven't gotten it.
I think it's incredible fun, man. I mean, like you can see little tones like that is Commandy with red, white, and blue hair there. I mean, he's okay. I mean, it's just the things you see in this. And like I kept reading it. It wasn't something. It's not Shakespeare by any means, but he draws the figures like all the people are drawn like He-Man figures. It felt like, but Kirby-esque. You know what I mean? So you take Thundar, Black Star, all that stuff. He's got bad guys and swords and mutations and just, I mean, he really just channeled. He mixed the Saturday morning cartoons with a little bit of a Commandy. There is what he did, but it's not Commandy at all. 8-eyed monsters and stuff coming after him after the apocalypse.
Definitely gonna have to get that one.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look that one up myself.
And in our chat, I noticed that Matthew Roscoe is back. Haven't seen him in a while.
Paolo, what happened?
He got a new job at Anime News Network. That's why.
Paolo, are you going to share something? I guess he is.
Yes.
Storm.
Time for European stuff. Here's something that's post-apocalyptic, almost post-apocalyptic. Storm is an astronaut. Storm, no first name, is an astronaut, and he gets stuck in the Jupiter red spot for apparently thousands of years. And it happens. And when he comes back to Earth, everything is changed, and the most important change: there is no ocean.
See, I don't know if I think that I just thought of another genre, a man out of time story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, everything may seem
genre too.
Mm-hmm. Sure, the easiest way to make it heroic is to make sure that the future is post-apocalyptic. So the man is, because if you go to the future and everything is futuristic.
And everything is great, and you hang out. And
actually, it should be right.
That's not much of a story there.
Yeah, the thing. Yeah, they put you in I think there's that perception that if you travel through time, if you go to a good future, you won't be able to adapt. Although that's not quite true. I have the 3001 novel, which is the last one from Arthur C. Clarke. And they kind of explain, they throw it in your face. If you take a man from the year 1001 and put him in 2001, he's going to freak out. If you take someone from 2001 and put him in 3001, he's going to adapt pretty quickly, because we are living in a time where we are used to fast social change. So technological advancements are not going to be that much of a problem. Also, we are used to having different political systems all around us. We have our own, and then we have our neighbors and the other guys on the side of the planet. And so we are used to having people with different coexisting with people with with different philosophical values. So if you move from anything that happens after the Industrial Revolution, if you go into a good future, you should be able to adapt. So if you take someone out and put them in a post-apocalyptic world, either they better have been at least in the Boy Scouts, because if you put me in a post-apocalyptic world, I'm going to die of starvation.
This I don't know. I mean, I'm just going to throw this out here from your description if I followed the right stuff, but it sounds like shades of Buck Rogers a little bit, but very intense. You know what I mean? Like it's
I mean it's Buck Rogers and
John Carter
and John Carter at the same time.
To me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Flash Gordon, quarterback, New York Jets.
No, more like Storm, international astronaut. But there was an ecological disaster and created by oil drilling, and all the oceans vanished inside the Earth's crust. So there's technology out there, but there's also barbarians. This is at the beginning of the story. Storm landed in Cape Canaveral. So yeah, this is Florida.
The water thing in post-apocalyptic stuff seems to be a common. I don't know. I don't know if I'd call it a trope, but it happened in Hercules and Commandy. OMAC and stuff like that with Dr. Scuba, and then you had Mad Max, and
I think it's also because symbolism. Water is life. That's the first thing you need.
I can see that
to have life. So restricting the water kind of restricts life.
Yeah, I want that book just because of the artwork.
That cover was nice.
It's beautiful art.
Yeah, Don Lawrence, and the inside is painted too. Although Don Lawrence also created the Trigon Empire, that one's in black and white, but his art style just makes up for it for not having any color. He is very good at drawing, but there's technology. This one. After the first album, him and his girlfriend, that's not the girlfriend, they set about exploring the world. And so there are beasts, there's ancient technology that's kind of forgotten. This is a semi-holographic ship that's kind of the Star Trek Next Generation holodecks going haywire. So they turned it into a sort of blood sport. That's awesome. In where they are.
I thought that was a Jim Steranko cover because I thought he drew himself on it there.
Yeah, I only read the first 2 albums of this series, so I don't have anything, and I don't have them anymore. I need to figure out a way to buy this as cheaply as I can, but there isn't one, because every time they reprint this, it's an artist edition, oversized. There are no collected editions of this, and most of it is either in Dutch, German, or even French is kind of rare. So yeah, this one I've never read, but as you can see, they keep going back to barbarian elements, but then they have new technology again. And more technology, like here they're naked, but here they're wearing special suits.
When did this come out? Do you know the year?
Started in the mid-70s.
Okay. I was getting a little bit of a Johnny Quest vibe. I was thinking 60s there. Okay.
And then it changes. The first 10 albums are a cycle. The second batch of albums after that, it's a different cycle, because now they seem to be in some sort of space station or something, because there's something that's float. It's usually called the first cycle is the Lost World, and the second cycle is the Chronicles of Pandarva.
Oh, that's fantastic. The one cover you showed where he's blindfolded, holding the red head, going across the desert.
Mm-hmm.
I went Barbarella with the angel that got blindfolded, where she has the red hair and the skimpy out. Barbarella actually has an outfit that looks like that in the movie. So I'm digging this. This is something I would get, but I'd have to get you like on a private chat to read it to me. You know,
the thing here is that Don Lawrence is British, but this series was first serialized in a Dutch magazine called Apple, and the writer Dick Matina is Dutch, but the writer on the second album, is Martin Lodewijk, and he was the editor of Apple, and he's also a cartoonist in his own right.
Okay.
He had a spy series called Agent 327, which is basically him making fun of Peter Gunn and James Bond. The character is based visually on Peter Gunn, but it's humor.
Oh, Sleepy Reader just wrote, "If you really hunt, you can find some in English. I have 2 of them."
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Nice.
I know there are British editions. I know the Brazilians put out the first cycle in magazine format, but after that, I never picked that one up. So, and I'm not sure if it's. I don't think it's easy to find. So,
nice stuff.
So glad this is
Do
getting
you know what comic that is not post-apocalyptic, but I think is sometimes post-apocalyptic? Conan.
You know, I was going to mention that they're, because of the fact that they had Atlantis,
especially
was
like
the big city,
was
the big city, and then
and
then it falls is where it turns that time.
And there are some stories that are directly related to like the apocalypse, and like in general, it's not post-apocalyptic, but they have post-apocalyptic stories within Conan, where he goes into some old temple with 1,000-year-old demons or wizards lived there, and all sorts of bad things happen because of that. And
he's also got dystopia there, man. Remember, I mean, we talked about Red Nails, and there's 2 societies living underground, warring with each other.
Oh yeah, he can run into a dystopia at any time.
Yeah, so the apocalypse of that, there's something that happened down there with those races where they were cut off. So there could have been a big event there.
I think it's European, origins are show too, because as Paolo said, there've been lots of local apocalypses in Europe over the last 2, 3, 4,000 years. Lots of lost kingdoms in Conan. Yeah, exactly.
If you go Lost Kingdoms, man, you're gonna end up talking of Tarzan also. A lot of pulps have those in. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think you're gonna have like a post-apocalyptic story within another bigger genre.
Right.
So within like sword and sorcery, Conan, you can have a post-apocalyptic story.
Because the understanding is that whenever Tarzan runs into old civilizations in the heart of Africa, they are the remnants of Atlantean outposts, which kind of survived the Great Disaster, but having lost contact with the main continent, they had no way of keeping their traditions alive and their equipment running.
I wish you guys were. Oh, there's a great Face of Evil Doctor Who episode I could talk about. But anyway, I kind of wish you guys were here before the show, because you could have heard me talk about Philip Jose Farmer's of Feast Unknown. That's all I'm saying. I might hit you up later. You want to see the book where the apocalypse is starting, and I actually got to talk to Garth Ennis about this. I actually had pulled the video off of Twitter, and I got like 12 seconds of the conversation on YouTube. But I actually talked to Garth Ennis about this one after he wrote it. You've heard me talk about it before, but it's one of my favorite books, and it's only like 4 or 5 issues. It's River Red Charlie with these 3 dogs.
Oh, okay.
I don't think I've ever seen or heard of that one.
I have not either.
So basically what's going on is from the dog's viewpoint. So when they do show people talking, it's all scribble, like dogs would understand them. The word balloons are scribble. You don't understand them. But everybody's starting to in the middle of a city and stuff. Everybody is brutally killing each other. It's happening now. And they get in their head that one of them had been taken to the ocean by the master before. So while they're trying to survive, like the dogs are grabbing each other as they're like falling off ledges up on the buildings and stuff. But their whole thing is to get across the continent and make it to the ocean to get away from everybody. They're dogs. So I was sort of wondering if couldn't they just turn around, go a few miles the other way instead of going all across country. But hey, whatever. So of course, there's like some weird stuff going on with the humans. There's like some disease. They're killing each other or something. What we were afraid of, and there's like a dog that's after him, and the dogs are getting people to do weird things to him and everything. These are the wraparound covers, but this is just fantastic, and the dogs are lovable in this terrible world. I don't know how somebody like Garth Ennis, with what he's written before, is able to come up with something like this. There's actually some cuddly moments with these dogs. And of course, I'm the guy that will not watch a dog movie, and I'm real careful with anything with dogs, so they always kill the freaking dog at the end.
Yeah.
Okay, anyway, not saying that's what happened here, right? So my friend was picking on me, then he didn't realize he was in on it. He has a post-apocalyptic book called Crossed that is just too much.
Yeah.
I can't read it. Vulgar.
I love Crossed, but man.
Yeah, it's too much for me, right? You know what I mean? Like when I saw the Biscuit game, that's all I'm saying. But it's bodily fluids that give everybody this virus that, and a cross will appear on their face like a scar, and they just do vulgar things. I'm losing the words.
Crossed is the only horror anything that affected me, like a horror story show.
I couldn't do it. So my buddy was thinking that this was the prequel to Crossed, and I'm like, leave my damn dogs alone. So we end up going to Winston-Salem, South Carolina, where he's going to be doing a signing, and the video is up that the comic book company he was working for at the time, Aftershock Comics or something, they recorded me talking to him, but they only put like, 10, 15 seconds up on Twitter, and I had to record it so I could have it, and I stuck it on YouTube because I didn't want to lose it on the phone. But he assured me no. He said, no, this was not the prequel. And I turned around to my buddy and I'm like, and then he went, but it almost was. And I shushed Garth Ennis. I said, stop. I shushed him. And I said, stop right there.
By the way, Tim had a great observation about Crossed once that I still remember. And he's like, when you've got your Crossed comics at home, you hide them under your pornography.
Yeah.
It's like you want your pornography out on the coffee table before Crossed.
Yeah, you're like, damn right, I got Playboy and High Society and some Penthouse, but I don't have any Crossed. I don't know.
Yeah, this just reminded me of something that I had forgotten of mentioning it in the chat before. Warren Ellis's Freak Angels.
I've never read that one.
Yeah,
it's on my list.
Yeah, I saw it when it was online. The pages were online on the website for the entire series, so I didn't get to the end before Ellis took it out. But basically that thing is what it is credited as was the children, the kids from Children of the Damned growing up and ending the world and then realizing that they did a bad thing.
Yeah, it seems like there was a movie called The Brood or something. I can't remember what it's called, but yeah, that's what it sounded something like this movie I have in my head where all these kids were born under total eclipse and they look like normal children, but they're arranging things for people to die that's getting in their way. It's an old like 79, 80, 81 movie somewhere, 1980. And then Just a Pilgrim, I got to talk to Ennis about this one. He actually signed this one for me.
What year did that come out? Early 2000s?
Well, this actually came through Wizards line. I'm trying to think what it was
I
called.
remember buying it, and I still have them, but I haven't seen it in so long. It's on my shelf somewhere.
Black Bull? I think
2008.
And what?
And Paolo, can you say this gentleman's name? Is this not the creator of Judge Dredd or
Dog? He is Carlos Esquerra.
Okay, thank you. I'm not even playing that game with the names tonight. We all know how that goes, right? But I had to make peace with Garth Ennis. This is a post-apocalyptic story where the sun increased in size in all the oceans. That's what I'm saying about the water always being an issue. So people are crossing over the water and just the sun expanding like that. These people were there. These are the survivors that didn't turn into flame when it happened. The sun just increased and went back a little bit, enough to where we can live, but all water's evaporated. And the sea creatures and things that survived have mutated. There's a caravan of people going across, and Just a Pilgrim is nuts. He's crazy, and he's real religious. And you get his origin story. He went cannibal. That's why everybody's afraid of this guy. He's a cannibal. It turns out he was a cannibal to survive. When the Earth still had an ocean, he was trapped on a raft from a ship that went down with 5 guys. And when they found him, he was drinking rainwater from their skulls, and he had to eat them, and he was nuts. And he was in a sanitarium when it happened. He was he was locked up. So anyway, he's the one who's going to come across there, and the biggest butthole of the caravan of people getting across there gets grabbed by something from underground, pulled back down. They're on the ocean floor where there's no water, and when he reemerges, he looks like a gigantic scrotum with a head and arms, and he has eggs laid inside of him. That's what the thing did. So the biggest thing about this is I had to make peace with Garth Ennis because he would proclaim he was atheist, but he's writing things like Preacher and stuff. He had no problems using religion and stuff and in his works, and that bothered
working out his issues with religion. I always
that's what I'm getting at. It kind of bothered me, but this works because there's a sequel to it where they found a NASA rocket or something that's going to take them to another planet, and they want to take the Bible with them. And do you take an earthly religion into space for a new society that's starting? It got deep the second time around. So Just a Pilgrim is just, I absolutely love this book. It's basically Clint Eastwood out there and playing Mad Max with some
who drew that one? That's okay. He's the artist on it.
I'm gonna go solo just for a minute to show you how they found him in the raft after he was in the raft with everybody.
Did Amanda Connor do something with Garth Ennis from that line?
The Pro.
She had a book.
The Pro?
Yeah.
And she had another book too.
I thought they had another book too. I can't remember what it is.
There was another book. I don't recall the name.
I don't know about you guys, but The Pro was another one that was too much for me, man. Woo.
A classic Marvel post-apocalyptic graphic novel now.
That's on my list, and I did not pull it off the shelf. Yes.
Funny, I went and pulled out the graphic novel just because you don't see this one that often.
No, not at all.
I like that back cover. And this one I haven't read this one in so long. All I remember about it is it kind of happily wraps it up. This is really like a wrap up for the series.
Do you remember what you said about this when we talked about this before? Mine's signed by P. Craig Russell. And you said you figured Killraven was this book that you said you figured out he was gay because he drew beautiful men.
Yes. Craig, yeah. He's one of the. Matter of fact, I was just talking to. There's a very famous illustrator. J.C. Leyendecker is his name. Early 20th century. He was one of the back when illustrators were rock stars. He was a rock star illustrator, and he was another guy. About the same time I was discovering Craig Russell, I was also discovering J.C. Leyendecker, who also his men were prettier than his women. And this is 1984 or so, where there wasn't a lot of gay in culture, and I just remember going, 16, 18-year-old Jared going, his men are so much prettier than his women. I probably means something. But it took me years to figure out what that meant was he was probably gay.
I got you. So with the book, The War of the Worlds, maybe you guys can explain to me. I've got some of the comics from the 70s. I've got that in there. And I keep saying it's based on H.G. Wells. So are these the aliens if they succeeded taking over the Earth that he's fighting?
That's what it is.
Yes.
Yeah, they come back, and this time they are immune to the common cold.
They came back
and they wore masks.
That's what I'm missing. How did that happen? I got you. That was the missing piece right there for me.
Yeah. Man, some beautiful Craig Russell artwork. Whoops, there's that face. I mean, that's what I mean when I say his men are prettier than his women.
Now, Killraven has kept a fan following up until around the 2000s. For real. I mean, like, those guys aged out.
But then Joe Linsner.
Yeah.
This.
I have it. I have that one shot. That's all I'm saying.
I have the one shot as well. And then there was the Alan Davis's attempt at doing reboot or a simplification of the story that would allow it to become a movie. But since then, what they've been trying to do is see if they could bring Killraven into the Marvel universe. Although they kind of did because of this. Although not exactly this. In the 90s series, the Guardians of the Galaxy.
I was going to mention that book. Do we consider that post-apocalyptic because of the War of the Worlds happens?
The Badoon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, not even just that's another. That's just something as a part of it, because what we learn in that series is that the Martians do attack, and Earth falls. The superheroes fall, and it's one of those things where gate crashers. Yeah, I knew it. Crash was in there somewhere.
That's Amanda Conner.
And you have War of the Worlds happen where Mars attacks Earth, and the heroes fall. Tony Stark tosses his armor into space, or he puts it in a rocket, sends it to space to keep it from them getting it, and Earth basically falls, and it brings back the Guardians. Come back to, I don't know, I don't recall if they're setting the Guardians in the same future that they were in from Marvel superheroes when they introduced them that way. But that was an interesting series taking place in the 90s, and I got to watch a lot of that being created back then. It was
that Jim Valentino, or he already left? Because I think I followed it up.
Jim Valentino did the first 29 issues.
Yeah.
So yeah, the thing is, Valentino we're in the 90s, so Valentino starts bringing in everything he can from the Marvel universe into the future.
The 70s Guardians of the Galaxy is one of my favorite 70s comics. And that was like the 90s one was all about the Marvel Universe. Even though it took place in the future, it was all about the Marvel Universe. The 70s one, if I remember correctly, they were all supposed to be the last of their race. So that one was post-apocalyptic in that the Charlie 13 was the last Jovian, Nikki was the last Mercury. So it was like, I guess that one would be post-apocalyptic, but it was really more of a space opera.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But because they leave Earth in the beginning of the series.
Okay, so the Guardians of the Galaxy of the 90s, I really, I was real patient when they brought in the descendant of Wolverine, Rancor, whatever her name was. But then when they had the planet, when they returned to Earth or whatever it was, they had like a whole tribe of people dressed like the Punisher.
Oh yeah.
I was starting to dip out. So did Valentino bring in Killraven, or was that the person that followed after?
Michael Gallagher introduced Killraven elements in the stories, although he kind of goes. He has the Martians defeating all the superheroes in a one of a kind epic battle.
Yeah, that book about Valentino, it's fun. I wouldn't tell anybody not to read it, man. But when they were calling Wonder Man Hollywood, I'm like, who the hell would remember Hollywood 1,000 years in the future? You know what I'm saying? There's all kinds of stuff. Where I was like,
that one was so much about the present rather than the future, even though it took place in the future.
But Valentino mentions that
I've not seen that.
Valentino kind of mentions that the superheroes lost to the Martians because he had in the beginning he has Tony Stark sending his stuff out in space, and that's where the alien race called the Stark come from in the first arc.
Didn't Killraven team up with Spider-Man? I've seen Killraven pop up, but I don't
he
know.
may have teamed up with Spider-Man in one of the, I can't remember.
Yeah.
But
Marvel team up 45.
Okay.
Got it.
That was a great run in Team Up too. Now from like issue 39 to issue 53, to me is just once again one of my favorite classic runs of a 70s comic. Hey, look, it's Chris Girusso come to say hello.
Okay, 70s apocalyptic sci-fi movie, The Idaho Transfer with Peter Fonda. No, and I can't believe
I've never heard of that one.
Wait a minute. I'm getting my Robert Redford and my Peter Fonda mixed up. I have not seen it. No. I was sitting there thinking, for some reason, I was thinking about 3 Days of the Condor, and I'm like, what?
Oh, yes. I just read that novel this year for the first time.
Now, here's a book that actually got ruined for me by the artist being. Luckily, the series was over, but this artist, I'm just going to call it. I'm not going to give details, but she was absolutely horrible on Twitter. I don't know what she was doing. I mean, horrible. And it just one of the few times that
left a bad taste in your mouth.
Yeah, but why The Last Man? Is the fact that it was, to me, it wasn't a new concept. I swear I've heard this concept before. But anyway, everybody with a Y chromosome, I got it upside down. Excuse me. Okay. But everybody who had a Y chromosome, males, animals and everything, they die all at once horribly. Like it's like their insides just start coming out. And except for Yorick and his monkey. So right away where the monkey and he survived, I knew it was like the monkey was a lab animal and all this stuff. And it's pretty brutal what happens with women get real. And I was like, man, I've worked with women, 98% women since 1995. And I have seen women be real women. And they agree with it. They tell me I've done very well. They tell me I'm considered one of them some days. But basically, I'm a house cat, and they get real. And when I heard them talking about sex for the first time, they can never, ever call any man a pervert ever again in my eyes. Okay? So reading this, it was cool. It was, some of the takes they had on it. It got a little political that I was like, please don't do that. And they got away from it. But yeah, some of the stuff got brutal, especially when he got captured by a dominatrix later on. But of course, the freaking artist, Pia, whatever her name is here,
Pia Guerrera.
Oh my God, I had her on Twitter, and it was like overnight she just got freaking nasty, and it was so bad. I'm like, I got rid of I had to get rid of them. And I'm going back, and I'm like, she really got me. I was like, oh my God. I mean, you would have thought she was saying it directly to me, but it didn't matter. Technically, she was. Anybody who was reading that, she was saying it to. You know.
I couldn't get into Why the Last Man. Part of it was I wasn't fond of the art.
Yeah.
But
so everything with a Y chromosome dies. That means only mammals die.
Don't try and figure it out. It makes no sense.
Well, what it was is the thing, and I'm not saying you're not wrong, you know what I mean? But the animals died. Okay, we'll just leave it out there. They wondered if there was people in the space station alive that were men, that were stuck up there. But what won me over is York is walking around with a gas mask and a poncho, and he's acting like a woman who's just scared. They don't know what happened. And they're all meeting. A lot of women are getting together and stuff, and they're in a park in Washington, I think at the monument or something, which I kind of giggled because I'm like, all the women went to the one phallic symbol in Washington. But anyway, so they're sitting there talking, and they really break it down. They're saying, I hear Tori Amos is over in England, and she's doing this with women. Well, Tori Amos is a feminist, and her music, of course, she would be trying to do something to help. And then they slow it down, and they really think about all the people famous who died, who were men. And it was moments like that where they're really taking it in, and they're helping you realize what this has done with the world. Except, instead of expecting you to know what it would be like, they're really slowing it down and showing people realizing that this is not a fucking game.
They're giving you the sense of the enormity of it.
Yeah. And that's why I thought it was well written with a moment like that. I mean, this guy, Brian K. Vaughan knew to slow down that moment, and let's have a minute to take in what's happening. I was like, excellent.
62 Lefty Blues says, Why the Last Man turned into modern dating in America, didn't it? What?
That's why you can't live online, sir. I'm telling you. Yeah. I know what he's saying. He's not wrong.
Felipe Reader says Chris should do a Kill Raven series.
Sign me up. I'll do it.
That's what Chris. This has nothing to do with the post-apocalypse. I just wanted to show this because I found it kind of incredible. They did a Three Stooges facsimile edition.
Yeah, I saw that. I didn't order
Robin Hood.
Yeah,
I got it just as a curiosity. I was like, oh, okay. Chris did a Three Stooges book.
Oh yeah, man.
What if the Three Stooges were the last man on Earth?
Yeah,
I'll do it.
Stooges in Outer Space is a movie I still watch regularly. You know what I mean? For some comfort. So I'll tell you what, we're going to probably wind this up in about 15 minutes. But Gil Kane, do you like Howard Chaykin? Do you like Gil Kane? I like this story so much. I have two of them, one to read and one to put up. Basically, this is called Distant Fires. Let me show this real quick.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just flat out post-apocalyptic. And the reason I like this is that you see how Superman's on this cat? It's a house cat. Well, my favorite book since I was about 14, and it does knock Douglas Adams out and stuff like that, is Starman's Son. And the cats have mutated to where they're smart and domesticated. And that's a house. It's supposed to be a house cat, but that's artistic license. So I had a feeling that this was influenced by that book. But basically, there was a nuclear war. And
that's called the illustrator didn't read the book.
Yeah.
Happens all the time.
Gotcha. So basically, there is. I mean, it's just. I mean, he just flats out. This is what I call the Mel Brooks way of telling the story. You watch any Mel Brooks story. Mel Brooks said it himself. In 5 minutes, you have the plot. You follow what I'm saying? So right off the bat, man, there's nuclear war. He's showing Metropolis. There's missiles. There's all hell breaking loose. You know, everybody's dead. I mean, they got bodies and bodies and bodies. And this is Superman telling the story. And when this nuclear war hit, everybody lost their powers. So he's
okay.
Yeah.
That's an interesting take on that.
Yeah.
I'm surprised I did not pick that up. When did that come out?
98. I remember this is the year my son was born, but this is to me, I mean, I don't know if you're a Gil Kane fan or anything like that, but I mean, to me, I think this is like his last great heavy work.
Okay. That is weird.
I was
buying books back then.
No, that was Superman Blood of My Ancestors. That was his last work, the one shot.
He died after great work, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I got you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So they got like the house cats, and like I said, this reminded me of that book, Starman's Son, with the cats and stuff. Post-apocalyptic. He's finding people. They're going native. I mean, Howard Chaykin really, wrote this stuff, and of course, magic still works.
Of course.
But there's a twist to it because I think it's Superman becoming Shazam. As well. I can't remember now. I got to go back and reread this, but like I said, there's two of them. And he's yelling, "I'm back! I'm back!"
The big red cheese.
But like I said, all the heroes get together. They're living out in the woods, like the Garden of Eden again, where they're living so long. You got Martian Manhunter becoming a bit of a monk, marrying Wonder Woman and Superman. But
Martian Monk Hunter.
It's not going to end well. That's all I'm going to say.
Spoilers.
Back cover, man. Back cover.
Right on the back cover.
Yeah.
Too. That's great. There's design work for you. Give it all away.
But like I said, this is just a solid little story with some nice little Kevin Nolan inks Gil Kane. So
does this count as post-apocalyptic?
Ooh,
I think so.
Yeah.
Because the alien invasion is still ongoing. Civilization has not fallen.
So then it's not post-apocalyptic. It's a
no. Wait.
Story.
There is a great catastrophe. Wait a minute, what happened here? I'm sorry. Let me get you off that. There's a great catastrophe. The icebergs have melted, and Roanoke, where I lived, which is 2 hours away from me, is the new coast. Yeah,
nice.
We've lost some landmass.
A good current post-apocalyptic story is, except for the last issue, which had some sort of guest artist, What's the Furthest Place from Here? I've been enjoying that one. That's the story of we don't know what happened, but all the adults are gone. And the kids are all living in these towns, which there's someone watching over them, but they're all organized into these gangs. Like one is like the record store gang, the police gang. They're all based on like, different occupations and places and things. And it's been a solid, fun book.
Nice.
And here's something that started as detective noir and evolved into post-apocalyptic science fiction.
Grendel.
Yeah, this one's the God and the Devil trade paperback, which is the one set in the future when there's finally a new Grendel, Eddie, the guy from the sewers. And it's the story with the sun gun. Every continent kind of took over from the destruction of Europe. Although there are a lot of places on Earth that are irradiated. and the Pope is in Las Vegas.
I don't think I've read that one. Is Matt Wagner actually writing that one or not?
Yeah, it's Matt Wagner. The artists are John Snyder, Jay Geldof, and Bernie Moreau.
Okay. Bernie Moreau. I usually buy everything. I don't remember. I just remember him doing the early issues of Grendel. I didn't know he did anything later on. Or maybe I did. I got a bunch of issues of Grendel there I haven't looked at in 25, 30 years.
Well,
So maybe they're in
like I said, I haven't done a haul video for the stuff I've gotten in the last 2 weeks or something like that. And it kills me because I now have every issue of the Kamiko Grendel.
All right.
So this right here, I'm going to go close up for just a second here. This right here, oh man, the story behind this, I can't remember what year it was, but this was announced. I actually had it pre-ordered because it has a ton of Bronze Age, Silver Age, Copper Age stories of Great Disaster, post-apocalyptic stories pulled from Strange Avengers, the entire run of Hercules Unbound, some DC Comics Presents. But this goes back to what we were talking at the beginning of the show about how it all fits in. It pulled from Amazing Heroes or something that they had. This is part 2. Paul Levitt's trying to take all the disaster books, Atomic Knights, Hercules, Commandy, OMAC and stuff, and saying there is a continuity. So this is the actual article trying to do all that stuff. Yeah. But this has like one shots in it, the Atomic Knights. It's got Superman, the Superman story that explains how his suit ended up in the Commandy book. I have a video up where I was like flipping through my Commandy books in the box, and Jared just did get a hold of me and wanted to know why in the hell I had a Superman book in my Commandy collection.
I ordered that thing. Then it was canceled for several years. Then it finally came out, and by that time,
I'm so glad you said that because I would have forgot to finish my sentence. But yeah, so what I did is that I had to hurry up, and I had in my first real computer, my desktop computer back in 2002 that I kept until 2012. You talk about viruses, but I actually made a Word file with all the books listed in this, and I was trying to pick up the books because I never knew when this thing was coming out. And the universe worked out for me because I ended up paying something like $3.99 at Ollie's for this. So it was only a $20 book, but still,
By the way, I had to go over to my shelf just to see what issues of Grendel I have. And I have all the way up to issue 40 of Grendel. I swear I don't remember issues like 20 to 40.
That's what I think Comico went under, and there's only 40 issues. And then he started.
So I couldn't. So this one is like by, Tim Sale, created and written by Matt Wagner, black and white art by Tim Sale, and color by Bernie Moreau. I didn't even realize. And then the back is Grendel Tales, a special preview. Yeah. So I think they did.
Issue 16 is the one hard to get a hold of because it starts a Mage story in the back.
Okay. I've got that one. But
so the last two I want to show here, and I can't believe I forgot about these, is Nausicaa, Valley of the Wind. Yeah, I've got a bunch of those. The movie is like this much of a story that's that thick. You know what I mean? So, but it started in the 70s as a manga, and they started in who's this company? Mobius has some pinups in this and stuff that he's doing here, but I can't remember the company. I think it's Viz. Yeah, Viz started putting these out in the late 80s, and it took years. They were in 3 and 4 chapter books here, miniseries. And then the one I fell in love with back in the late 80s when somebody brought an issue or something to art class in 1988 or 89, Appleseed.
Love that stuff.
Love Appleseed. And I think it's Tubi or something that has like some of the movies, the cartoon movie, the anime movies, from the manga. Absolutely love Appleseed. The guy who drew this drew the best landscapes, the best, panned out views of cities with cracked buildings and demolished and stuff.
Sequential Geek says, "What have you not read, Howler Mouse? Everything from the last 10 years.
War, yeah, from about 2015 to War and Peace.
And last month, I bought a reprint of the first Post-Apocalyptic comic.
Oh, here we go.
Hold
on, I'm gonna get you on solo layout, sir.
Buck Rogers.
Buck Rogers.
This is from the Portuguese collection that came out in the 80s, but inside we have the original 1928 strip.
In the 24th and a half century.
No, that's not Rogers.
Yeah, and here's Wilma Deering explaining. The thing is, the art comes out as very small.
Yeah, I mean, it was, what is that, the 20s that's reprinting from?
Yeah. So the newspapers were larger.
Yeah,
but I also bought a more recent edition. This is the Dynamite series.
Okay.
What did you think? I didn't last. I'm not going to say anything. What did you think?
It's not bad. I understand the need to try and make it more modern because Yellow Peril is not relevant to us. So it sort of got Great Disaster vibes because the bad guys are animals. They were animals that were evolved in the lab. They were sent out in space, and as we know from every science fiction story, if humans send something out in space, it's going to come back meaner and wanting to destroy us.
It sure is. Looks like Joe Matt colored some of these Grendels too.
Yeah, I think Steve Olaf had something to do with it. You know what? What did I do with it? I've got a Grendel the 80s Grendel graphic novel right here. I put it up when I was getting this stuff out. What did I do with it?
The Grendel graphic novel was the one from Mage.
Oh, look what I just found. All right. I have my Just a Pilgrim Wizard poster.
Ooh.
From back when it came out. And then I got all these promotional Grendel posters. I got
look at that one.
These
black, white, and red.
Nice. I remember that one.
Yeah.
Oh, those are the new ones. I remember you showing those. You got them for the omnibus.
I picked up some more. Yeah, and then that Full Circle Alex Ross Fantastic Four book that came out.
How was that?
It's a feast on the eyes. I thought plot was a little weak, but that's not why you get that book. That book is
the coloring is
beautiful,
very strange too. It's not normal Alex Ross coloring.
He's going for 60s pop art. He did fantastic with it. It's fantastic. But I've got the promotional poster for that. It's the front of the cover, and it looks like it's about it's a huge poster. I'm gonna have to measure it off, man. I think it's 29 inches by something,
24 by 36. That'd be a standard size.
Okay, that might be it. Yeah, it was getting there. But man, what was I going to say? I had something else.
It flew out of his mind.
That RoboCop Terminator. I was wanting to say this when Wilson was talking about Terminator. Walt Simonson ended up doing a RoboCop versus Terminator Dark Horse miniseries back in the 90s. Yeah. And now you got me thinking with our little talk about dystopia versus post-apocalyptic. That is dystopia RoboCop meets post-apocalyptic Terminator. That's the bridge right there.
When you stepped away for a moment, I was showing and talking about the gallery edition of it.
Yeah. It's fantastic.
Oh, and speaking of anime or manga, Akira.
Yes.
Fall underneath that because that opens up with a nuclear war. But
Neo-Tokyo was about to explode.
Right. And then they go back to society is back just about because there's the talk about it, but we don't really get if it's again, haven't read it since the 80s, really. What happened to the rest of the world? Is it just Neo-Tokyo that rebuilds from that point?
Akira, Kaneda, Tetsuo.
I'm suspecting for Christmas, my wife has got me the great big huge box set of Akira hardback.
Oh, cool.
I'm suspecting.
I wanted to check that one out. I saw that Sleepy Reader got the big Love and Rockets box set on Twitter. I don't think he's made a video of it yet, besides on Twitter.
I need to do a story on this one day, but this is something that I got from Marvel called the Akira Club.
Oh wow!
And it basically has, if I remember correctly, it not only It
Yep.
not only has background, it's all in Japanese, but it has like the creation of the comic book as well as the movie, and then the impact Akira was having in Japan at the time. And if I remember correctly, uh, it has an art gallery of the artwork in black and white, but I think it also has fan art as well. But the fan art is various artists who liked Akira that were like current comic book artists. I'm trying if this is where I think it is, and unfortunately, it may not be. I think this just focused on Akira and the impact in Japan, but there was eventually a book that was published that had other artists that worked on it, and one of them was a Mobius piece of artwork. Unfortunately, it's not in this book. I thought it was, but it was a piece of art that Mobius did in tribute to Akira, because I think Marvel put out the Akira tribute book, and I got to hold the original page that Mobius did, and it was only about this big. It was just a tiny little image of Akira that he painted that was beautiful. I was hoping it was in this book, and again, I haven't looked in this book in so long, but I thought it was part of this series. But again, it was one of those things that I always hoped that Marvel would have published it, and they never did. So a copy was sent to them, but they never put it together.
And yes, Sequential Geek, as you can tell by my Manara Erotic Oracle deck, all A's in his name. Says cartoonist kayfabe Ed Pisker has a lot of Akira editions and can tell you the difference between all of them. Did they ever put out an edition with the Marvel color, like in trade or anything? I don't think so.
Like, I don't know.
I think all of who published it? Dark Horse put out those phone book editions that were in black and white.
Dark Horse, and then the current one is by Kodasha, if that's how you pronounce it. I think those are in black and white as well.
Right, I don't think Marvel's color ones ever got reprinted.
I don't think so. Because even Marvel didn't do a big phone book type.
No, they never collected them at all.
No.
Matter of fact, I wonder who owns the coloring. Because usually the licensee, the person set Robert E. Howard Estate owns the Conan comics. So all those Conan comics that Marvel did, Robert E. Howard owns and the estate owns. That's why Dark Horse was able to publish them. And that's why Marvel can publish the Dark Horse ones. So I assume that Atomo's estate owns the Akira stuff. I wonder why they never published it in color.
Don't know.
There is actually a lot of reviews of the Akira box set that came out. I mean, that box set came out, I don't know, I want to guess 5 years ago, or maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, a few.
About like 4 years ago.
I do remember seeing some reviews on it where somebody actually went through and they had all sorts of volumes and they were comparing each one of them. And they were telling the story that involves what you're talking about, but I don't know how thorough it was. So somebody somewhere out there knows, because this guy had to have read it somewhere. You follow me?
I don't.
So
I would just think somebody would put out Akira in color. It's all sitting there.
Well, no, there is no. There is one that's in color, but I don't think they've actually. Are you talking about collecting the colored?
Yeah, collected,
gotcha.
Like the Marvel color.
Yeah.
The stuff that Steve Olive colored.
Yeah, but the thing is, since everybody's now used to manga, you don't really need the color version to make it palatable, no matter how interesting it looks.
From my observation, and this is just an observation, it doesn't mean anything, grain of salt, whatever. But Akira is one of the first. I don't know. It was one of the first ones that's generational. That one has really held on to people, at least here in America, right? You got people that were there when the movie came out. You got people there with the Epic. You got people that came out with another edition. and they've all stuck to it. It kept collecting fans, but it kept the ones that they had, right? So there's all sorts of people who complain about, well, this edition, they got all the sound effects in Japanese, but they finally, put it in, they finally did it from, how do they go? Right to left, right to left. They'll collect it certain ways and in different ways. They can't stand it for it being mirrored, but they're glad that they're glad everything's in English. Or you got people who are like, they got it collected the right way. They didn't mirror it, but they still didn't do something right. I think it's a property where there's so many generational fans, you'll never make anybody happy. But
color usually makes people happy.
No, I've seen people complain about it being in color.
But usually I say, there's not that many black and white books like in the American comic book market. There are, but there's not that. And usually when I show off my black and white books, people are like, ew, black and white.
Well, here's what's funny about that. You can get a collection, Copic markers are expensive, but you can make a project of it,
Oh, not with these paper. Well, you can color one side. The other side is going to be a art project, so to speak.
There's been very few books that like I would prefer in color. Like, I read the first time I actually got to sit down and read the complete Bone. Oh, we got Paolo showing something. It was in watercolor through those Galactus editions. I can't go back to black and white, but I'm like, don't touch my Savage Sword of Conan. Those are black and white. Leave them alone.
Well, they were made really. There's a lot of like gray washes and stuff like that color won't.
Guys, I'm going to let you guys go on and let Paolo show this stuff. Paolo, you're going to be stuck for a minute.
Okay.
No, go ahead. I'll do that.
Okay, yeah. This is Beyond 3000. It's a post-apocalyptic comic that Mike Deodato did with his father. His father, Deodato Borges, actually wrote some comics in the 1970s and 80s in Brazil.
So he must have been a young comic artist with this one, huh?
Yeah, this came out in the 80s. So yeah, it was still a very young Deodato.
Yeah, because I don't think I'd ever seen his work until the 90s.
Yeah, and here's the thing is now the stuff that he started putting out in the late 90s, early zeros, that was his actual art style. The
Wonder
first
Woman, the Thors. Yeah.
No, after that, Hulk. When he started doing Hulk, that's when his regular art style started coming out. What he did in Thor and Wonder Woman was him trying to draw like Jim Lee, because that's what his agent told him.
Okay.
You guys want to draw for the U.S. market. You have to draw like Jim Lee.
Okay. Gotcha. Gotcha.
Except Roger Cruz, who wanted to draw like Joe Madureira.
Yeah. See, I love we get those jokes here. I love we get those here.
Yeah. And this it's kind of like Bloodstar, the same type of story. It's set way after the apocalypse. The apocalypse was swift. It happened in 10 minutes. Nuclear exchange, as is typical of 1980 stories. Everybody was afraid of dying by nuclear bomb. And then it says, so yeah, people revert to barbarism. So it's not very original, but it's got some very interesting artwork, because the Brazilians at the time, they were trying to create a market for themselves. Everything was Disney. If it wasn't Disney or Marvel, and there goes Chris.
Chris is having his own apocalypse right now.
Yeah. And if Brazilians wanted to work, they needed to draw kids' stories for Mauricio de Souza's studio. So doing a science fiction story was kind of an escape for this new generation of artists that came through, and a lot of them ended up working at Marvel and DC in the 90s. It was not only Deodato, but also Mark Campos as well. Was one of the first.
Mm-hmm.
And
John C is saying hello to all of us, so I'll say hello back. You okay there, Chris? You came out of that all right?
Oh man, let me see if I can.
If you can see and hear me, I guess I'm okay.
All right.
So the one that I got out, and I put to the side and almost didn't show me, but like some Charlton
Doomsday plus one.
Now check out that John Byrne Commandy inspired cover.
Oh, completely command. Yeah, even down to the rafts.
Yeah, I'm thinking this was 75. Now this one, this is an old bag. This is what it came in, but they only did like 6 issues, and then Charlton kept the same numbering, right? But number 7 is number 1, number 8 is number 2.
I just reprinted them.
Yeah, they just reprinted them. It kept the number going. Yeah,
but there is a 7th story. It was published in that thing that Layton put out. Bob Layton put out.
Right. So I got some of the original ones here. And,
I remember loving those when I discovered it, because I discovered John Byrne at Marvel in the mid to late 70s, and then finding early work was like, ooh.
Well, what's cool about these, if you're a Byrne fan, you can watch his style change. I don't know if he was figuring things out or whatever, but it was definitely a learning curve here.
But you can see he was talented.
But it as a guy who's read a lot of Byrne, and this is an opinion thing again, number 4 is where you get John Byrne. Number 4 is where it is John Byrne. There he is. You know what I mean? Like, this is the one where he went to town a little bit, right? And then I've got the Fantagraphics, and I thought this was what Paolo was talking about, but I'm wrong. But anyway, they Fantagraphics put out a recolored version with Gil Kane covers.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, so there's number 1 and all this stuff.
But
right?
there's only 6 issues again, I think. There is a story which was published in, I think, that the CPL gang put out, but it's never been reprinted anywhere, I think.
So just to let everybody know the plot of this, see if I remember right? But there was two that they explained it where there's like somebody in the United States, somewhere in Russia, were having a pissing contest, and they were like, screw it, and they just went ahead and bombed each other. They think is what happened, right? Anyway, you got 3 or 4 people up in a space station in orbit. They come back down, and thanks to the nuclear war that went on, they just happen to find a Viking in ice, and he unthaws and starts walking around with them. And that's it. That's it. They were like, oh, it's a Viking that has just thawed out of an iceberg. Check. Okay, let's go back.
Sure, why not?
Yeah, that was it.
That is fantastic.
That's the plot. There you go. And whatever. But I can't remember. I mean, I read this stuff when it came out. It's fun.
I know I have at least 1 issue of it.
Yeah,
because I remember that. I remember that logo clearly, but I don't know what issue it would have been. Early Bird.
Let me get out of Solo. There we go. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Actually, I think one of the issues of Doomsday Plus One I have is one of the, because I never saw these really. It's got the torn off logo on top that probably some shop, some candy store returned for credit, because I don't know where I got it. Someone may have given it to me as a kid. I know I didn't buy it, but I was like, but it's one of those, I think it might be one of the, if I have more than 4 logo-less comics in my whole collection, that would be a lot. I don't even think I do, but that's one of them.
Well, I'm gonna look this up for Sleepy. He's asking who wrote it. I don't think Byrne wrote them, but I remember somewhere in the last 10 years. I only know it because I remember putting it on a video when I got a proper number 1 of Doomsday Plus One. You would have thought I found Fantastic Four number 1. I was freaking happy. But then John Byrne around 2005, 6, 7, 8, somewhere around there, he went back to it and did a 4-issue miniseries, and I know I have it. I got to find it. Where he was like doing an ode to Doomsday Plus One, and it was Doomsday .1, nothing like the freaking original. I was like, people were in a space station. There's a nuclear war. There's no Vikings. There's no underwater people. Oh man, I don't think they put credits in a lot of these. So let me look here. But like I said, these are really good. He's playing with the layouts and doing.
Yeah, I remember one of the things, like I said, I really liked about the series too was, a kid Jared. It gave me insight into comics. It gave me, the idea that artists start somewhere and learn and grow and then become really good.
And they had some foreshadowing because they find a woolly mammoth in ice when they land on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And then lo and behold, right behind them, somehow it snuck up on them. There's a gigantic one right on them. Alive. Yeah.
They didn't hear the ice crack as he stepped out of it.
And then that's where the dude pops up. I'll help you with the mammoth. You know?
Oh, good thing he knows English.
But I've not seen any writing credits.
And knows what a mammoth is.
I'm a Viking. I know everything about mammoths.
Yeah, apparently this reprint I have, there are no credits. It doesn't even say John Byrne. So this is from 78. So yeah.
Good old Charlton.
Yeah. But I would love to have a collect edition of his Raj.
Oh yeah.
Oh man.
I have somewhere. I have that oversized one they put out in the early 80s.
Yeah, his Raj 3000 artwork is better than what he was doing on Doomsday the first couple issues.
Didn't he do wasn't Rog a backup in that?
It was in E-Man. I have a few of the original.
Okay.
And it was a cartoony style that he revisited in What the. Like he picked right back up. And when they did that What the series, the comedy stuff, he did a Superman Fantastic Four, and it was the same style of drawing. Like
I'm gonna walk into the other room and see if it's in my magazine section.
According to Wikipedia, Joe Gill was the writer.
Joe Gill and Tom Sutton. I'm getting that. I didn't really start getting real involved with Charlton until YouTube, with some people sending me stuff like Charlton 66 and stuff. But I'm starting to get the idea that Joe Gill and Tom Sutton ruled Charlton, is what it's starting to feel like. Mm-hmm. With a little Ditko.
I have my suspicions that Joe Gill may have written this Steve Ditko's material for Marvel.
Okay.
In the monster stories, because if they're Stan Lee preferred working with Ditko before the superheroes, but if it's not signed by Stan Lee, he didn't write it. So who wrote? It's usually understood that Stan and Larry co-plotted, and Larry wrote most of the monster stories. Although even then, I'm not entirely convinced that was the case. But the Ditko stories, Ditko was already working with Joe Gill at Charlton.
Yeah.
In 58, 59, 60. So maybe the stories are ready to go. I know that Stan liked rewriting stuff just because.
Yeah.
But I don't see anybody. There are guys out there who have blogs. They do. They try to figure out the writing styles for Golden Age and Silver Age comics.
Yeah,
and it's not an exact science, and it's not easy to pick up on. But given the cultural importance that this has, I like to see those guys focus on the Marvel monster period, because it's really important to figure out who actually wrote those stories.
Well, I'm on a Facebook group, not to get off on a tangent here, but I got invited about 2 weeks ago to a Facebook group by a guy, and he kind of warned me, but there's a Facebook group called the Marvel Method, and the whole point is to discredit Stan Lee with what he did and didn't write. Some people post things that are right on point with facts and things like that. And there's some people out there who are just like, they just want to see them burn. I'm like, there's I tread lightly when I scroll through my Facebook, because you just never know what you're going to see with that. And it seems like Joe Gill popped up on the page not too long ago. That's my whole point.
All right.
And I couldn't find my ROG 2000, but I found another post-apocalyptic comic from the 80s.
Nice.
They were chosen to be survivors.
Whoa, wait a minute. I've never seen this.
That looks new to me.
Spectrum Comics.
That's why.
This is the preview issue that was magazine size.
Guys, wait a minute. Before you get going, I've got to go call. I got a client who's supposed to be being taken to the emergency room. I need to see if I need to go. Y'all continue.
Okay. This was, and then it became like a comic by Spectrum Comics, and then it changed names to just Survivors. And who's it by?
When was Spectrum Comics publishing?
Year in 1982.
Okay, that was before I was collecting comics, so I don't think I ever heard of Spectrum.
I think Steve Warren is the Woron is the name of the artist. Woron. Carl Kessel did the Survivors logo.
Oh wow!
There's
Okay.
the name. His logo credit. But I remember liking this one. It was a solid comic. It was about these, 5 people who were chosen to be survivors. They were stuck in some, I don't know, place somewhere and some futuristic thing, and then the apocalypse happened outside, and they had to go outside and be survivors. But this is, let's see, in 82, I was probably a sophomore or junior in high school. So I was, this is when I first started going to the comic shop regularly. So this was a thrill to get for me, a comic that wasn't Marvel or DC. So I remember enjoying this one thoroughly. The art's a little amateur, but solid.
Mm-hmm. And how long? How many issues, or was that a graphic novel? You said?
No, this is a magazine. Son, let me walk over here and see if I've got them over here. Are they under they or are under survivors? Let's try S. Somewhere on here, I have them. Nope, can't find them. There's probably less than 6 issues of them.
Okay.
It went from, like I said, the preview was magazine size. Then it went to comic size for a few issues. Then it was relaunched as just Survivors. No, they were chosen to be. Matter of fact, this one is just called Survivors, The Survivors. So why the preview was called The Survivors and the first issue was called They Were Chosen to Be Survivors, I couldn't tell you. Not everybody was a marketing genius in 1982.
And the writer probably got paid by the word, so we'll put text on the covers as well.
Carl Kessel didn't want to do those extra words. This is a pretty nice logo too. That $1.50 this cost in 1982. That was expensive. How much was how much was a Marvel comic in 1982? 40 cents? 50 cents?
So
that was not cheap
70
for me to get.
Was it 75 by then? No, 60.
It was 60?
I think it was 60 cents. Or that's when I started in 83. I think Marvel comics were 60 cents.
Yeah, they're probably about that. So $1.50 was like, whoo! I was buying something expensive.
That's almost 3 comic books. I don't know if I was going to spend that kind of money.
And that's what your average Marvel or DC fan said to me. They're always like, what? $1.50? And it's in black and white?
There was a Survivors graphic novel which reprinted the stories published by New Series and by Burnside, which were the last ones.
Yeah.
But the earlier ones were not reprinted.
When did the graphic novel come out?
Let's see here, 1989.
89. Wow.
Yeah. Publisher is called Illustration Studio.
Okay. Look at that. They reprinted some of them. Survivors. It was one of the. I still like some of my favorites from that early era when I first, Justice Machine was another favorite. Once again, started out as a magazine, went down to a comic size, but not the greatest comic of all time. But it was fun to read a comic that wasn't a Marvel or DC that I could get at, the comic shop.
I've been trying to remember if there are any European post-apocalyptic series, but the French were very much into the whole space exploration, and and even the world of Incal is somewhat dystopic, but
yeah, I
there's
wouldn't
a
say
little
that.
bit. There's a lot of tongue-in-cheek humor.
That
So-
one that I got last year that was came out of the Italian studio, Deep
Mhm.
Beyond. That was post-apocalyptic.
Mhm.
Because that took place people living in domed cities after the apocalypse. They couldn't go outside because the air was all bad.
Mm.
I forget who did it, but I think I remember you telling me it was an Italian studio for Image
Yeah.
Comics that came out through.
Yeah.
And although we only mentioned the movie, Logan's Run had a set of comic books.
Oh, that's right.
Mm.
But I
Of
think
course,
they just reprinted the movie information. I don't think they went any further in the lore because I think it was only a 3 or 4 issue miniseries.
It went 6 or 7, I think. I think they may have had like 1 or 2 issues after.
Yeah, so the first 5 adapt the movie. Number 6 was only 10-page story because they have that Thanos filler. And then the issue 7 has a story, but it ends in a cliffhanger and there's no follow up.
Oh, okay.
And well, they were gonna go with the movie chronology because the movie adaptation does not follow the book.
Right.
And I have the novel somewhere, or I used to have. I don't know if I let a friend borrow it and they never gave it back, or if I just lost it.
You know, a book that a cartoon I wish they would give a treatment to. I know it's Ruby and Spears instead of Hanna-Barbera. That's probably the problem. But did you guys read when they did Space Ghost years ago, where it had a tone where it was serious? Like the praying mantis aliens did an invasion because they want to eat people, and it was sort of like Lone Ranger. Space Ghost lost his kids and his family, and he originally wore an executioner's hood over his mask and things like that. They need
the
to do
Alex Ross issues?
Yes. They need to do a Thundar story with that same real tone. You know what I mean? Like do something that's like real barbaric and find out where that tooth came from. They rode around. Oh my God.
Very nice.
You hold that up. He's going solo, guys. He's going
Thundar, the barbarian.
And Ukla, the mock.
If you're going to show yours, I'll show. Yes.
Oh, I forget her name. Damn, Ariel.
Ariel. Yeah.
Ariel. Yeah.
The Little Mermaid?
No, put respect on her. She was the first Ariel. Well, yeah. Because I don't think the Little Mermaid had a name in the original.
He-Man before He-Man.
Yeah.
I have a fanfic. I'm sorry, Will. I'll shut up in a minute.
Okay.
I promise. But I have a fanfic story where you find out the Herculoids is actually a prequel to He-Man. They're a royal family in exile, and the little blonde-haired kid is actually Adam. And then you find out Thundar is a descendant of both of them when they came back. Just saying.
So now we know what Tim does with his free time.
I do a lot of driving.
I always felt that those Hanna-Barbera superhero stuff should have had comic books, but I always wanted what I call real comic books, only in the sense of not an adaptation. I always dislike when they would take a cartoon, put it in a comic book, and it would just be they're trying to do the cartoon in a comic book format, and it didn't work. Like when Star Comics did Thundercats, just putting them in that brand just broke my heart, because it's like, oh, we could have a real Thundercat story.
These aren't for kids.
And it's like, but it's for kids. And they did that with the Hanna-Barbera stuff, because every time they would show up, it's like, it's a little too cartoony.
I want my Impossibles comic to be serious.
Yes, exactly. With the Frankenstein Jr. backup, but it should be serious.
Chris, it's taken a lot of nerve for me to show you this, okay? So just put that out there. You know. But
it should take more nerve to show it to Jared. Oh, those are awesome.
They're great.
What killed me is that with my Thundar, Ariel, and Ukla is the only one that came out good. You know, I'm like,
but it comes with practice. The fact
no,
that you
this is-
did them.
They all came out good.
Thank
Oh,
you.
there's a real reason why you want to put that in the He-Man universe. You have a descendant of Orko there.
Friar Tuck wants to know where is Ookla's horse?
Well, here's what's funny. For me to start a new page, I'm going to have to do something else to fill this one up. So to keep the theme going. So maybe it'll be the horse. Maybe it'll be Gemini. I don't know. I got to fill in this gap here before I go onto my Labyrinth. I'm going to do Labyrinth next. So, yeah. But I cannot believe you're doing Thundar. That was just fantastic. I'm going to buy those. Yeah.
By the way, do you know what the comic that's not post-apocalyptic, but probably has had the most apocalypse in it is?
X Factor.
Savage Dragon.
Oh, no, I'm playing.
How many
Yeah.
apocalypses has Savage Dragon had in it, Chris? At least 2.
He
He's
did
on a third Earth.
Yeah. What was the first apocalypse his Commandy story?
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
the Savage World or whatever. Yeah.
Then Mr. Glum, I know, blew up Earth too, didn't he? And then
He
they
merged.
had the big
He
merging
merged them
of
all.
everything.
He did. Yeah, he did like a merging of the multiple, like Crisis on Infinite Earths, merging everything into one continuity.
Right.
I had a little moment with my mortality. I think it was yesterday, or it's been the last few days. Somebody wished Eric Larson a happy birthday because he turned 60. And I'm sitting here going, I was like, 14 when I got that Doom Patrol #7 with, I was collecting Doom Patrol when he like debuted in a DC comic there. And I was just like, oh my God, he's 60. I had a moment.
That means I'm old too.
Yeah. Like it used to be. It used to feel like anybody making comics, like that guy's way older than me. But now I'm like, he's not that much older than me anymore.
Right. Right. It's flipping me out. He's just 9 years older than me. I'm like, what have I done with my life? Man.
I'm just a singer in a rock and roll band.
Well,
Sleepy
guys-
Meter says those look good, Tim.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. That's my Friday nights after I wake up from my nap when my wife's not here. But anyways, I am going to have to call it, guys. I'm technically on call. I have no idea. I was ready to go for the long haul there, so. But I have no idea if I'm going out or not, which means I can't do anything else either.
Hey Tim, you live in North Carolina?
I live in Virginia, sir.
Virginia.
I'm about an hour away from Tennessee, an hour and a half from North Carolina, and an hour from West Virginia. So yeah.
I'm in Greensboro, North Carolina.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So, holler if you're ever in the neighborhood.
I might do that. I make
Yeah.
my way to Winston-Salem, Raleigh, Greensboro. I'm down there quite a bit. Yeah.
Okay. You know Acme Comics?
Nice. All right, everybody say goodbye.
Have a good night, y'all.
See ya.
Take care. Until the next apocalypse.